Chapter 1538. The nurse hesitated for a long time before nodding her head. Before she left, she did not forget to remind her, "Don't get too close to her. Be careful that she doesn't hurt you." With that, she left. Xianxia stood at the door and watched for a while before carefully probing. "Sis Wanru?" The back of the person on the bed stiffened as if she had heard her voice. She then turned to stone and did not respond. Xianxia furrowed her brows and was about to speak when the person on the bed suddenly turned her head around. A face as pale as a ghost's came into view, giving her a fright. She could not help taking a step back and patting her chest, still feeling a little scared. Mu Wanru suddenly got off the bed. Her pair of empty eyes stared at her blankly, lifeless and numb. "Who are you? Sis Wanru, don't you recognize me?" Xianxia tilted her head, clearly puzzled. Mu Wanru looked a little timid, as if the woman standing at the door was a terrifying scourge. She leaned against the wall and trembled in fear. "Don't come over. Don't hurt me. Go away, go away." Xianxia was taken aback. She remained expressionless for a long time before the corners of her lips curled up into an arrogant smirk. "Don't you recognize me? I'm Enya." As she spoke, she sized her up with disgust. A sinister look appeared in her eyes. Mu Wanru, so you have a day like this too. I didn't expect you to end up in such a miserable state. How pitiful." She gloated and mocked her as she sized her up in disdain. "Look at you. Take a good look at you now. You're dirty and sloppy. How disgusting. How does it feel to be abandoned?" Xianxia paused for a moment before spitting out 2 words. "You deserve it." Because of these 2 words, Mu Wanru's expression changed. She looked like she understood, but also like she didn't. Her expression was a little strange. "Mu Wanru, I've wanted to say this to you for a long time." Xianxia stood at the door and looked down at Mu Wanru condescendingly. It was as if the latter was nothing more than a pitiful ant beneath her feet that she could easily trample to death. "Brother Mu is mine. It belongs to me." "Brother Mu." Mu Wanru repeated it a few times in her mind. Suddenly, the look in her eyes changed. A monstrous hatred appeared in her eyes. It was twisted and terrifying. She suddenly pounced at the door like a hungry wolf. Both her hands reached out the metal bars and grabbed at her angrily. Xianxia, who was standing very close to the door, was caught off guard and could not dodge in time. 2 bloody scratches were left on her face. She screamed and covered her face as she took a few steps back. She felt a burning pain on her face where she had scratched. When she touched it with her fingers, she felt a sharp pain. What are you doing?" Xianxia covered her face and yelled at her. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, seemed to have gone crazy. She kept making muffled sounds as her hands scratched in her direction. She was slurring her words and could not make out what she was saying at all. Xianxia hurriedly took out a hand mirror to check her face. There were 2 bloody scratches on her face from the other's sharp nails. Chapter 1539. Xianxia wiped her hands with a handkerchief and frowned in pain. She then looked at Mu Wanru's long fingernails, which were embedded with a mixture of black and yellow filth, and felt nauseous again. How disgusting! Oh God, just how dirty were her hands! When she pounced on her, the gust of wind that came with her was accompanied by a fishy stench. Xianxia looked at the room behind her and saw that it was extremely dirty. There were feces, vomit, and all kinds of urine stains in the room. It was a sight that made one's scalp tingle. Mu Wanru screamed like a madwoman, "Xianxia! I'm going to kill you! I'm going to kill you!" Xianxia was stunned. Suddenly, a strange and vicious expression appeared on her face. "You recognize me? Xianxia, even if you turn into ashes, I'll still remember you. I won't let you off. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. You killed my child. You're the one who killed my child." "Child? What child?" Xianxia was stunned. Why did she keep saying that Xianxia killed her child? Wasn't Mu Wanru infertile? Could it be? Was it her and Brother Mu's child? Xianxia's face turned ashen when she thought of this. Where did your child come from?" Song Enya easily lost her rationality when it came to Mu Yaja. She became hysterical and questioned Mu Wanru sternly. Say it. Is the child yours and brother Mu's? Say it. Say it. Mu Wanru did not seem to hear her, though. She pounced on the metal door with a strange and sinister expression on her face. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You're the one who killed my child. It's all your fault. Return my child to me. Return my child to me. Song Enya panicked. She rushed forward and slapped Mu Wanru, leaving a deep handprint on her cheek. You haven't answered my question. Say it. Where did your child come from? Ah, my child is gone. It's gone. My child was killed by you. Mu Wanru, however, did not answer her question. She looked extremely depressed as she slid to the ground, her eyes empty and lifeless. The child is gone. The child is gone. Xianxia, you deserve to die. You deserve to die. Song was filled with anger. She had lost her rationality, but when she regained her senses, she sneered at herself. She had actually stooped to the level of a lunatic. Where did the child come from? She must have been delusional. She had been delusional, she had been delusively. Song Enya looked at Mu Wanru. While she was angry, she was also secretly pleased. At least, Mu Wanru was crazy. This was the consequence of going against her. Who told you to fight with me? Song Enya suddenly cursed. Who told you to fight with me for brother Mu? Mu Wanru, this is your retribution. You can't win against me. You and Xianxia are the same. Brother Mu is mine. None of you have the right to fight with me. With that, she snorted and turned to leave. After leaving the ward, the nurse hurriedly chased after her. Just as she was about to speak, she was surprised to see the 2 red marks on her face. Chapter 1540. She's really crazy. She doesn't even recognize me anymore. She just pounced on me and scratched my face. Song Enya's face was sullen and her eyes were fierce. When she turned to look at the nurse, she forced a smile. It's fine though. After all, she's already crazy. I can't stoop to her level. The nurse exchanged a few pleasantries before begging her again. Please don't tell anyone about what happened today. Otherwise, I'll definitely be fired by the hospital. I beg of you. All right. I got it. Song Enya suddenly asked, Oh, right. What's your name? Li Qian. Song Enya turned around and left. Before she left, she went to the hospital director's office and told him about what had happened today. She mentioned one thing. There's a nurse in your hospital. I asked her to take me to visit a patient. She actually shamelessly asked me for a red packet. How exactly does your hospital train its employees? Even a lowly nurse knows how to be corrupt and accept bribes? The director's face turned white after hearing her words. He immediately made a phone call and confirmed that there was indeed such a thing. Then he fired the caregiver named Li Qian on the spot. Song Enya smiled smugly and left the hospital. If she was bullied, no one would have an easy time. After resting for a few days, Xianxia was notified to join the production team and attend the press conference held by the production team of Lethal Beauty. It was not until all the main creators were present at the press conference that Xianxia learned about the full lineup of the production team. The female lead was confirmed to be Lin Ji, while the male lead was Hua Jin, a popular actor in ancient costumes. Lin Ji was a famous actress in ancient costumes, so there was no doubt that she would play the female lead. As for Hua Jin, being the most popular actor in ancient costumes, he was expected to play the male lead. At the press conference, Xianxia saw Hua Jin's real face for the first time. Because it was quite a distance away, Xianxia could only think of one word from that fleeting glance: charming all living things. He's too seductive. This man was too beautiful. This kind of beauty almost subverted the barriers between genders. Looking from afar, the palm-sized handsome face was as white as jade, with a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as charming as silk, and the corners of his eyes were long and narrow. The perfect lines of his facial features were like a sculpture made by the gods. Every detail was meticulously carved, extremely exquisite and beautiful. Qin Zhou had mentioned him before. This Hua Jin is the most popular young actor in ancient costumes nowadays. His background is not simple. So, you have to be careful. Stay away from him and don't get too close to him. Being crowned as the #1 scholar in ancient costumes was definitely not an undeserved reputation. Hua Jin's ancient costume was very charming and exuded the fragrance of ink. His face was like jade, his skin was like cream, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. His bearing was carefree, and he did not have the masculine spirit of an ordinary man. His temperament was gentle and elegant, and he was delicate and pretty. The adjectives of the 4 most beautiful men in ancient times did not seem out of place when applied to him. His body had a classical charm that made people unable to help but fall for him. It was said that Hua Jin was his stage name. However, no one knew his real name. Xianxia had always remembered Qin Zhou's advice. He said that Hua Jin's background was not simple and that she had to be careful when interacting with him. Chapter 1541. Hua Jin noticed this and couldn't help but glance at her thoughtfully. However, it was just a glance. Soon, he turned his gaze away and looked straight ahead. He didn't look at Xianxia again. However, there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. The first segment of the press conference was an interview with the main cast. Originally, such interviews were mainly for the male and female leads. However, during this period, due to Xianxia's popularity, Xianxia's limelight had once overshadowed Lin Ji and became the focus of attention. Some time ago, I heard that you negotiated an endorsement contract with the CEO of Louis Vuitton in China. Is this true? What do you think about acting in this gold-plated blockbuster? All the questions revolved around Xianxia. Lin Ji sat in her seat. As the female lead of this drama, she was unexpectedly neglected. She looked around the room and found that most of the cameras were focused on Xianxia. She felt even more annoyed. Xianxia's seat was lit by the flashing lights. She had a smile on her face and answered orderly. Her responses were quite satisfactory. Some of the questions were too sharp, but she was able to gloss over them with a few words. Not only did she give the media space to write, but she also gave them leeway. Her high EQ was undoubtedly displayed at this moment. Her on-the-spot responses were handled with ease. Qin Zhou wasn't present. He watched the live broadcast on his mobile phone and was quite satisfied with her performance. However, Lin Ji was a little dissatisfied. These reporters really didn't know their priorities. She was the backbone of the production. Xianxia was just a supporting actress. Why was she being paid so much attention? In order to be able to outshine all the other female stars at this press conference, she deliberately dressed up grandly. She was gorgeously dressed and had exquisite makeup. She wanted to win the attention of the audience at this interview. In the end, she was dressed so grandly, but the cameras were not focused on her. Wasn't this a little too much? What was wrong with the production team? Didn't they inform the media in advance? She was the female lead. The only female lead in this drama. Xianxia was just a supporting actress, a vicious supporting actress. Why was she receiving so much attention? The female lead was actually less popular than a supporting actress. This was too unreasonable. Lin Ji sat in her seat. Because of her anger, her whole body was stiff, as if she had been petrified. The lines on her shoulders were trembling faintly. Although she tried to force a smile on her face, the anger in her heart was surging more and more violently, and she was almost unable to suppress it. However, for the sake of the overall situation, she could only forcefully endure it. However, the displeasure in her eyes could not be concealed. As a result, when it was rare for the media to interview her, her attitude was quite unfriendly. Her tone was very harsh, and she even retorted with some sharp questions. As a result, the media was even more unwilling to interview her. On the other hand, Xianxia's ability to react quickly in the forest made the media more willing to interview her. Because of her interaction, the audience was laughing non-stop. Xianxia was someone who knew how to show off her burdens. Her answers were witty and humorous. She was not as coy and pretentious as other actresses. She was reserved and witty at the same time. The media was amazed. This Xianxia's EQ was too high. Chapter 1542. Halfway through the meeting, a media reporter suddenly raised his hand and asked a very difficult question. It said that Director Gu originally wanted to cast you as the female lead, but you ended up playing the supporting role. How do you explain this rumor? Yun Shirshir was stunned for a moment. Lin Ji and everyone else present were stunned. Except for Hua Jin. He looked at Yun Shirshir, and a playful look appeared on his face, which was more exquisite and beautiful than a woman's. He rested his chin on his hand and looked at her meaningfully, secretly anticipating her response. Lin Ji also stared at Yun Shirshir, wanting to see how she would answer this question. This question was very tricky. If she didn't answer well, both sides would offend each other. Yun Shirshir pondered for a moment, then said with a smile, I discussed with Director Gu and decided on this role. As an actress, I definitely want to play a challenging role. I really want to try this character. I feel that this character has a lot of tension, and I also hope to conquer her. So, those rumors can be said to be false. The matter of me being the female lead is false. It's probably made up by someone with ulterior motives. As soon as this answer came out, the director and producer sitting beside her smiled knowingly, but Lin Ji secretly snorted. Yun Shirshir's answer didn't disappoint her. It seemed that she still had some sense of propriety. Hua Jin, on the other hand, lowered his eyelashes in disappointment. He pursed his lips, feeling bored. He originally thought that there would be a good show to watch. In the end, he didn't expect Yun Shirshir to be so obedient. How boring! After the press conference ended, the crew opened a WeChat group and invited the main cast to join. As soon as they joined the group, Hua Jin sent 10 red packets. Good luck with the filming. There was a neat line below, Thank you, Flower God. Thank you, boss. Flower God. This was Hua Jin's fan club's nickname for him. The first period drama he starred in was called Fu of the Flower God, and his stage name was Hua Jin. He was also a super popular period drama prince. Therefore, the fan group gave him the nickname Flower God. After leaving the venue, Yun Shirshir went to the bathroom. When she came out, she bumped into Hua Jin, who was standing at the door. Hua Jin was 182 meters tall, but his figure was a little slender. He had the delicate beauty of a classical handsome man. Yun Shirshir was 165 meters tall, and her height reached his neck. She didn't notice when she went out and bumped into his collarbone. Ugh! Yun Shirshir was shocked and took a step back. When she looked up and saw that it was him, her expression froze. Hua Jin, on the other hand, smiled as he sized her up. His eyes were like water, especially deep. At the same time, it frightened people's minds, and at the same time, his smile was extremely charming, making people feel numb to the bone. Looking at him up close, even though she was prepared, she was still shocked by his beauty. He was too beautiful. The 4 great handsome men in ancient times were probably just like him. He did not have Mu Yaji's regal aura, nor did he have Gu Xing's aloof demeanor. Instead, he had the elegance and grace of a classic handsome man, as well as a jade-like beauty. On his body, there was a feminine temperament that didn't belong to his gender. His face was like the mid-autumn moon, his hair was like a knife, his eyebrows were like ink, his eyes were like autumn waves, and his thin lips were like cherry blossoms, soft and beautiful. Chapter 1543. He was wearing a white shirt today and looked like a flawless jade statue. Even if he was just standing there quietly, he still looked handsome and charming, giving people a sense of nobility. However, that pair of eyes gave people an inexplicably unfriendly feeling. He looked at her with a smile and didn't say a word. It was as if he was sizing her up. The atmosphere was a little strange. Why are you here? She smiled awkwardly and exchanged pleasantries. Hua Jin still didn't say a word. He just looked at her as if he could see through her skin and bones, looking into the depths of her soul. This person was so strange. He blocked the door for no reason and then stared straight at her. She didn't know what he was trying to do. It was really baffling. I'm in a hurry to leave. Is it convenient for you to let me through? Yun Shirshir said in a friendly manner. Her tone was very polite. Hua Jin, however, remained unmoved. This person was so rude. Qin Zhou said that Hua Jin was especially difficult to get along with. Moreover, his background was not simple and he had a strong backing. Although she didn't know this person well, Qin Zhou definitely had his reasons for asking her to keep a distance from Hua Jin. Hence, she didn't want to exchange pleasantries with him. "I'm sorry, I'll make a move first." After Yun Shirshir said that, she wanted to leave. She had just taken a step when Hua Jin moved his body slightly and blocked her way. Yun Shirshir frowned and changed her direction. Hua Jin pretended to be natural and leaned against the wall, blocking her way. She looked up in surprise but saw that he was still looking at her calmly with a smile. However, there was a playful look in his eyes, as if he was enjoying it. "Is there anything you want?" she asked. Hua Jin didn't respond and only shook his head slightly. Yun Shirshir was in a deadlock with him for a few seconds. Catching him off guard, he rushed out like an arrow leaving the bowstring. This time, Hua Jin did not stop her. Yun Shirshir looked back at him, only to see that he was still in the same position as before, not turning around. She inexplicably scolded him in her heart, then turned around and left. After she left, Hua Jin slowly turned around and looked in the direction she left. He raised his eyebrows and smiled enchantingly. "This is fun." Mu Shi's car was waiting for her at the entrance of the underground parking lot. Yun Shirshir hurriedly got into the car. Mu Shi, however, sensed that something was amiss with her expression. Glancing at her, she saw that the latter looked displeased and angry. "What's wrong, Shirshir?" she asked nervously. "Did someone bully you?" Yun Shirshir paused for a moment and then said angrily, "I just met a strange person." "Who is it?" "Hua Jin." When Yun Shirshir said this name, a subtle expression appeared on Mu Shi's face. It was indescribable and gave people a strange feeling. It gave people the feeling that Mu Shi was in awe of him and also had a complicated admiration for him. "Hua Jin, what did he do to you?" "Nothing." Yun Shirshir couldn't be bothered to say. "It's not a big deal. Let's not talk about unpleasant things. Don't be angry. Hua Jin is indeed not easy to get along with." Mu Shi comforted her. "He's not easy to get along with?" Yes, his personality is very strange." "Why do you and Qin Zhou say that?" Chapter 1544. "That's because he's very arrogant and unpredictable. He does everything according to his temperament. He's also known for his vicious tongue, even more so than Qin Zhou's." In that case, Yun Shirshir raised a brow. With his personality, he'll be at a disadvantage in showbiz. Disadvantage? That's for others. Hua Jin won't. "What do you mean?" She explained, "That's because he has a strong backing." "How strong?" "In any case, he has a very strong backer, but we can't say who that backer is." She drove the car out of the car park. After paying the fare, she added, "Qin Zhou wants you to keep a distance from him. He's probably afraid that you'll be banned if you get too close to him." "What do you mean?" "That backer of his isn't someone to be trifled with. If you must describe it." "Shirshir, have you seen the ancient poetry Queen's male pet?" "Male pet?" Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows as realization dawned on her. She continued, "Hua Jin is that man who's favored by the Queen. He actually doesn't come from a good background, but with that backer backing him, no one dares to offend him. Those female stars who were involved in scandals with him in the past were all banned and disappeared without a trace. He was probably suppressed by the sugar daddy behind him. That's why Qin Zhou told you not to get too close to him, lest you get targeted." Yun Shirshir, there was such a thing. Actually, many popular artistes have backers behind them. Some of them are obvious at a glance, while others you can't figure out, so you'll have to stay away from them. Generally speaking, the more mysterious the backer's identity is, the more complicated his background is. Most of them have connections with the government. The identity of Hua Jin's backer has always been a mystery. That's what Qin Zhou's advice has its reasons. It was no wonder that Lin Ji, who loved to ride on people's coattails, would take a detour when she saw Hua Jin. Yun Shirshir, however, shuddered. "Don't think too much. Once you're in the production team, you just have to be careful." Mu Shi comforted her with a smile. Yun Shirshir nodded. When Hua Jin left the venue, a luxurious convertible sports car was parked in the parking lot, waiting quietly. He walked to the car door and knocked on the window. The window slowly lowered, revealing the face of a woman with exquisite makeup. Are there any reporters behind you? Hua Jin shook his head and smiled. No. Get in. Hua Jin opened the door and got into the car. Before he could fasten his seatbelt, the woman's figure stuck to him like a seductive snake spirit. She gently sucked on the corner of his lips and licked it with the tip of her tongue. Jin, I haven't seen you for a few days. Did you miss me? I miss you too. The woman led his hand to her beautiful place. Hua Jin took the initiative to pull her into his arms and kiss her lips. After a passionate kiss, the woman leaned against his chest, panting, and asked in a low voice, Do you have a job tonight? Nope. Accompany me, okay? Hua Jin, aren't you going home tonight? I quarreled with my dad. The woman was a little angry. He wants me to cut ties with you. How can I do that? Jin, I want to be with you for the rest of my life and never be separated. Hua Jin hugged her but did not say a word. Chapter 1545. How is that possible? Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. Xiaoya, you are the most important person in my heart. No one can replace you. The woman's eyes suddenly became hot. She hugged him excitedly and gave him a deep French kiss. In the hotel, on the king-sized bed, Spring was enchanting. At the bedside, two hands were entwined with their fingers interlocked. Amidst the panting sounds, a woman's satisfied moans could be heard. The bedsheets were crumpled into a ball and were extremely messy. After making love, the sound of running water could be heard from the shower. Hua Jin sat at the head of the bed, holding a cigarette. Half of it was playing with it, and the other half was inhaling steadily. His eyes were staring blankly ahead. On his extremely beautiful face, there was laziness and carelessness after making love. Under his wet and messy hair, a pair of peach blossom eyes were slightly misty. In the lingering smoke, they gradually deepened. In the ashtray at the head of the bed, a few cigarette butts were stubbed out. The white bedding covered his naked body. He suddenly opened it and turned over to get out of bed. He put on a bathrobe and walked to the window. He slightly lifted a corner of the curtain and looked down at the night view of the city. In his mind, Xianxia's sullen face suddenly flashed. Hua Jin felt that it was extremely interesting. He couldn't help but smile. This girl, inexplicably, felt very interesting. Suddenly, a woman's warm body pressed against his back. Who are you thinking about? Hua Jin retracted his thoughts and looked back slightly. The woman hugged him from behind with a coquettish expression. I'm thinking about you. The woman's face was slightly shy. Why are you so slow? The woman's red lips moved and escaped. I saw your press conference today. Oh. His tone suddenly became cold. He said disapprovingly, What's so good about the press conference? When the woman mentioned the press conference, an inexplicable anxiety suddenly appeared on her face. I saw that when the camera turned to you, you were staring at that woman, right? Hua Jin asked knowingly, Which woman? That's the one in white. She's called sure something. I don't even remember her name. Hua Jin remained silent, not saying a word. The woman felt a little wronged by his perfunctory attitude. She hugged him tightly and asked unhappily, Between her and me, who's prettier? I've never seen you stare at me so affectionately. Of course it's you. Hua Jin turned around, grabbed her chin and smiled wickedly. No one can compare to you. The woman blushed and couldn't help but pout. Jin, do you know? I love that mouth of yours. It's so sweet. When Hua Jin heard this, his smile deepened. Do you know? I like your mouth too. Hua Jin bit her earlobe and said in an ambiguous voice, Sometimes, you bite really hard. The woman wanted to say something but stopped herself. She was shy and coquettish. She pushed him, but there was a sweet smile on her face. Hua Jin held her in his arms. However, from an angle that she couldn't see, his enchanting eyes were slightly cold and indifferent. His face was no longer as passionate as before, but a little cold. There was a hint of weariness between his eyebrows. When Xianxia returned home, she saw Yu and Xiao Yichen in the living room, tearing apart the package in full swing. She entered the house quietly, So the two little guys who were getting excited did not notice her. Chapter 1546. Xianxia purposely kept quiet. She walked behind them and watched their every move quietly. Yu and Xianxia did not notice the person behind them. They were still unpacking their packages. Some time ago, there was a shopping carnival on the online shopping website. Many items were greatly discounted and the prices dropped to freezing point. In a moment of carelessness, Yu ended up spending tens of thousands of yuan in his shopping cart. Xianxia was now a popular public figure. Because of this, she rarely had the chance to take them out on the streets. Therefore, the two little guys took advantage of the shopping carnival and spent tens of thousands of yuan in front of the computer for the whole afternoon. Of course, they used Wuxia's credit card. Wuxia did not know about this. However, tens of thousands of yuan was just a small amount to him. Yu bought a lot of things. However, because of the carnival, many express delivery companies were out of stock. Therefore, the packages were delivered a week later than usual. Yu and Xianxia had signed more than 80 packages from morning till night. More than 80 packages. Yu did not expect him to buy so many. He had suffered too much in the past. Therefore, even though he was young, he knew how to calculate carefully. When he saw that the price was right, he would place an order. When he signed for the packages, he was so tired that he almost vomited blood. At night, the two little guys sat in the living room and started to unpack the packages one by one. Yu had already unpacked a few packages. They were all clothes that he bought for himself and Xianxia. The designs were exactly the same, but the sizes were different. Xianxia tried them on and found that they fit perfectly. It was Xianxia's first time shopping on the internet. He was as excited as a little bird. In his mind, if he wanted to buy something, he could just go to the Mu Group's shopping mall. If he wanted something, he could just take it and put it on the company's account. However, Yu's shopping experience was an eye-opener for him. How interesting! As he watched Yu haggle with the shop owner, Xianxia felt as if he had opened the door to a whole new world. He felt that it was extremely novel, especially when Yu talked about something that made him feel inconceivable. He even started to feel sorry for the shop owner, but he still asked for a few gifts from the shop owner. He said sympathetically, You bargain too much. It's not easy for them to do business." Yu was dumbfounded. Xianxia watched quietly, feeling that the two little guys were really interesting. However, in the next second, her face stiffened, and her expression twitched. Yu virtuously picked up a bra and held it up high. "Xianxia, does this look good?" Xianxia was stunned. "Bra?" Yu raised her eyebrows and said, "Yes. I picked it for Mommy. What do you think of the design? It looks pretty good. Mommy hasn't shopped in a long time. She needs new underwear. That's why I picked a few for her." As Yu spoke, he picked up another bra while Xianxia was dumbfounded. "This one looks good too. The design is very reasonable. Mommy will definitely feel comfortable wearing it." Xianxia pursed his lips and said honestly, "I don't know much about this." "What do you know?" Chapter 1547. Idiot piggy. What else do you know other than eating, drinking, and sleeping? Yu picked up another lacy underwear. "I bought a lot of underwear for Mommy. I was afraid that she wouldn't like it, so I bought one of each design and let her take turns to change." Xianxia suddenly scratched his head and whispered, "Still, I feel that Mommy will feel embarrassed if you buy so many underwear for her." Xianxia, who was behind him, was petrified. It was more than just embarrassment. It was simply too shameful. "If you don't say it, who will know?" Yu looked at him in disdain. He paused for a moment and then tidied up the stack of bras. "When the time comes, I'll secretly stuff these into the wardrobe. She'll definitely think that her assistant bought them for her. This way, she won't suspect me." She would follow Qinzhou's orders every week to buy clothes for Xianxia. From underwear to gowns, she would buy everything from the inside to the outside. Xianxia picked up another bra, looked at it, and touched the material. The texture was soft. "Is there anything particular about the design you mentioned?" Yu frowned and said disdainfully, "Of course, there's something particular about it." "Tell me about it." Xiao Yichen propped his chin on his hand and looked at her, expressing his eagerness for knowledge. The bras mommy is wearing now have steel rims. I've done some research. For mommy, it's best not to wear steel rims when wearing bras. It's uncomfortable and not good for your health. That's why I secretly threw away those bras with steel rims. Yun Shirshir's eyes twitched hard the moment Yu finished speaking. How is this little guy so smart? He even knows about this. Indeed, the bras she was wearing recently had steel rims. Steel rims had the effect of gathering, so Mushi had been buying them in bulk for her. However, the ones that were truly beneficial to her health were those that did not have steel rims and did not have a sense of pressure on her breasts. Indeed, the steel ring bra was very uncomfortable, and sometimes, when the steel ring was deformed, it would cause pressure on the outline of the asterisk. The little guy was so attentive. How did he even think of this point? Who could tell her how to accept this reality? Her son actually bought a bra for her. What was going on? While she was lost in the wind, Xiao Yichen grabbed another well-packaged item. She weighed it in her hands and realized that it was quite heavy. What is this? Xiao Yichen curiously looked at Yu with a heavy package in his hands. Yu looked up and glanced at the label. Suddenly she smiled slyly. Dear brother, this is a present for you. As soon as he finished speaking, little Yichen's eyes lit up with a sound. After waiting for so long, Yu's gift was finally here. Oh my god. His younger brother had secretly bought him a present. What could it be? Xiao Yichen curiously held the package in his hands. His face was full of excitement, and he could not bear to open it to take a look. Seeing how treasured he was, a deep smile appeared on Yu's face as he stroked his head lovingly. Do you like it? As long as it's from Yu, I'll like it. That's good then. Yu was satisfied with his answer and then said, Open it and take a look. Chapter 1548. Duang. Under Xiao Yichen's excited gaze, 10 extracurricular exercise books came into view. Wow, all of a sudden, it was as if ice water had poured over his head. All of his anticipation and enthusiasm were extinguished. The excitement in his eyes turned into ashes, as if 10,000 plants had withered. Yun Shirshir wanted to laugh when she saw this scene, but she tried her best to hold it in. The conversation between the two little guys was too funny. She did not expect that Yu would buy a stack of exercise books for Xiao Yichen. When she saw Xiao Yichen's disheartened face, she covered her mouth and tried her best not to laugh. Xiao Yichen was still immersed in the heavy blow. What's this? This is my gift to you. Yu patted his shoulder considerately. You're going to primary school now. You must study hard and improve every day. These words extinguished all the excitement in his heart. That's not fair, Xiao Yichen pouted and complained. You gave mommy such a thoughtful gift, but why did you give me this? Extracurricular exercise books? To him, they were like a nightmare. Then what did you buy for daddy? Yu began to rummage through the pile of parcels. A few minutes later, Yun Shirshir and Xiao Yichen were both stunned. Yu opened the parcels and there was a pile of condoms in it. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Xiao Yichen was speechless. Yun Shirshir tried her best to control the raging emotions in her body. She clutched her chest as if she had suffered a heavy blow. Komoda. Dule. So shameful. What are these? Yu, this guy, this was an eye-opener for her. Xiao Yichen did not understand what these items were. Yu said as he organized the parcels, Idiot, these are to protect mommy. Protect mommy? Aya, you won't understand even if I tell you. Yu was too lazy to talk to him. Why was this little fellow so curious? He asked this and asked that. He didn't have the patience to answer them one by one. However, Xiao Yichen refused to budge. You, tell me. You know the most. Yu said, you wouldn't understand even if I told you. It's not suitable for children. What do you mean by not suitable for children? I'm your brother. If you can understand it, why can't I? Yu said, do you know where you and I came from? Not really. Yu mysteriously picked up a box and explained, with this, mommy won't have a baby. Before Yun Shirshir could react, Xiao Yichen, who was obsessed with his sister, was the first to stand up and strongly object. Yu Yu blinked blankly. Clearly, he did not understand why Xiao Yichen was so agitated. "Why are you so agitated?" Xiao Yichen muttered. "I want to have a sister. With this, I won't have a sister." "Idiot." Yu Yu also stood up agitatedly. "Do you know how painful it is to give birth to a baby? Don't tell me you want to watch mommy get tortured? Anyway, we're enough for mommy." He said this out of consideration for Xianxia. However, little Yichen was still so young. He did not know much about the matters between men and women. How could he understand the pain of a woman giving birth to a baby after 10 months of pregnancy? Chapter 1549. I don't care. I just want a younger sister. Yu Yu was speechless. He snorted and said, "I don't care what you say. I won't watch mommy suffer." A long time ago, he had seen a video about a woman who was pregnant for 10 months and went into the operating room to give birth. He was still young when he watched the video, but he was deeply frightened by the shocking reality of the scene. So, mommy went through such terrible torture when she gave birth to him? Some pregnant women even went through the gates of hell after giving birth to their babies. Yu Yu still had lingering fears after watching the video for a long time. His heart ached, he was sad, and he felt even more guilty towards mommy. Hence, from then on, Yu Yu was even more considerate towards Xianxia. He even loved her from the bottom of his heart. Because mommy gave birth to him at the cost of her youth and pain, he had to dote on her even more. Xiao Yichen did not understand. He looked at Yu Yu in disdain and suddenly said meaningfully, I got it." "What do you mean?" "You're obviously worried that mommy will take away your love after giving birth to a younger sister. I'm just worried that you'll have a younger sister to compete with you for love." Xiao Yichen suggested a conspiracy theory. Yu Yu's eyes twitched. "Compete for love? Isn't that so? Don't think that I don't know your good intentions." Xiao Yichen said a rare phrase. Then he had an expression that said, "I've already seen through you." Yu Yu was speechless. He thought to himself, what nonsense is this guy saying again? Xiao Yichen suddenly took out a few sewing needles from the side. These were the same sewing needles that Yu Yu had used to sew the curtains. He picked up the needles and was about to poke the packaging of the condoms. Yu Yu was shocked when he saw this. He quickly snatched the sewing needles from his hand. "What are you doing?" "I'm poking holes." "Then I'll have a little sister." Xiao Yichen cupped his face with both hands and said longingly. Yu Yu was infuriated. He clenched his fists and waved them around. Then he threatened Xiao Yichen, "Little brat, if you continue to cause trouble, I will beat you up." Xiao Yichen snorted indignantly. Then, as if he had seen something behind Yu Yu, his eyes widened in horror. He was so scared that his shoulders began to tremble. "What happened?" Yu Yu said in surprise. All he did was threaten him, and he was scared to this extent? When did Mu Yichen become so timid? Mom. Xiao Yichen trembled as he spat out a few broken characters. The boy could not help but follow his line of sight and look behind him. Then, he saw Xianxia standing behind him. Her face was ashen. "Yu Yu," a sinister voice could be heard. It was obvious that a certain woman was very angry at this moment. "Mommy," Yu Yu swallowed with much difficulty and called out to her. Xianxia snorted coldly and frowned. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen hugged each other in fear for warmth. Their teeth were chattering. Before they could dodge, Xianxia reached out and pinched each of them by their ears. Wah wah wah, bang. Chapter 1550. "Tell me, who bought all these?" She pointed at the pile of packages on the floor. Among them, the white Okamoto suit was the most eye-catching. The moment Xianxia pointed at the box of suits, Yu Yu's face flushed red. He pursed his lips awkwardly. Little Yichen, on the other hand, discreetly pointed his finger at Yu Yu, reminding his mother of the person who had bought these things. In any case, he wanted to shirk all responsibility. He tried his best to widen his eyes. Blinking pitifully, he looked at Xianxia innocently. His pure and clear eyes seemed to be telling her, "Mommy, I'm really innocent. I didn't buy all these things, I didn't buy them." Yun Tianyu caught a glimpse of Xiao Yichen's fingers secretly pointing at him. It was obvious that the latter was betraying him. He shot him a cold glance as if giving him a silent warning. Rather than calling it a warning, it was more appropriate to call it a threat. Sensing the coercion in his younger brother's eyes, little Yichen bit his pink lips. His outstretched little finger could not help but succumb to his tyrannical power. Feeling wronged, he curled it up and pitifully retracted it back into his sleeve. Xianxia took note of this little action. Although she was angry on the surface, she did not know whether to laugh or cry inside. These two little fellows, every time she was angry, they always had the ability to make her lose her temper easily. Yu actually knew how to threaten her older brother. This was not simple. Xianxia angrily asked, "What did you buy all these things for?" "Daily necessities." Yu's face was obviously trying to curry favor with her. "Mommy, I bought you a space capsule. You work so hard, but you can sit in it and have a massage when you come back. It's very comfortable. How much does the space capsule cost?" Yu answered honestly, $30,000. He had bought the most luxurious space capsule, and the massage effect was very obvious. When he saw Xianxia coming back from Milan the last time, she was so tired that her waist and legs were sore. Especially when she was wearing high heels, her feet were about to cramp. His heart ached. Xianxia's eyes widened when she heard that a space capsule cost 30,000 yuan. 30,000 yuan. So expensive. You're such a prodigal. Xianxia complained with heartache. Even if she were to rush for a job, it would still cost her 30,000 yuan. Upon hearing this, Yu felt hurt. She clutched her chest sadly as if she had been hurt by Xianxia's words. "Mommy, how could you say that Yu is a prodigal? How was he squandering?" To him, 30,000 yuan was not even worth mentioning. So sad. Mommy actually called him a wastrel? Yu pretended to wipe her tears sadly. When Xianxia saw this, the corners of her mouth twitched violently. She felt that she was the one at fault. Actually, she did not feel bad about the 30,000 yuan. It was just that she felt that it was not good for Yu to be so extravagant at such a young age. At such a young age, the child should be taught the correct concept of spending and not be so extravagant. She had to let the child understand that earning money was a very difficult thing, so that he would cherish the fruits of his labor. Hence, Xianxia calmly and patiently guided her child. Do you know? It's very hard to earn money." Was it very hard to earn money? Yu tilted her head in confusion. Clearly, she could not empathize with Xianxia's words. Chapter 1551. Yu explained, "You didn't buy random things." Xianxia was speechless. Everything Yu buys is useful. Xianxia thought of the bras and underwear, as well as the condoms he bought, and the corners of her mouth twitched. However, Yu's words suddenly rang in her ears. "Do you know how painful it is to give birth to a baby? Don't tell me you want to watch mommy get tortured? Anyway, we're enough for mommy. If you're like mommy, it's best not to wear underwear. It's uncomfortable and not good for your health." She couldn't get angry anymore. No matter what, this little guy was still thinking about her. Although her son had secretly bought her underwear and condoms, which was indeed shameful, but the child's intention was for her sake. Xianxia sighed and frowned slightly. "This time, mommy forgives you." Xianxia bit her red lips and said shyly with difficulty, "Mommy can buy these things." Yu smiled and opened his arms to pounce on Xianxia. He rubbed against her arms and said intimately, "Yu knows that mommy won't be angry. Don't do it again." Xianxia couldn't help but remind him. Yu nodded and said softly, "Okay." He would do whatever mommy said. "But mommy works so hard, you have to be more considerate of yourself. Yu is so worried because mommy doesn't know how to take care of herself." Xianxia patted his head and kissed his forehead. Mommy knows. You're only 7 years old. Why do you like to nag like an old man?" Yu's face immediately turned red. Feeling wronged, she mumbled, "Mommy actually said that Yu looks like a little old man." Behind him, Xianxia covered his mouth and burst out laughing. When Yu heard Xianxia's mocking laughter, she turned around and glanced at him coldly. Xianxia could no longer laugh. Yun Shirshir flicked Yu Yu's forehead. Don't bully your brother.
Alright.
Yu knows. Evening. When Mu Yaja returned, dinner was already prepared. Tonight, Yun Shirshir and Yu Yu prepared dinner together. Yu Yu had bought an oven, so he specially baked a cheesecake tonight. When the cake was served, little Ichen, who was sprawled on the dining table, was almost drooling from the craving. After dinner, the family went out for a walk. After returning from the walk, Yun Shirshir accompanied the two little guys to watch TV for a while. Then she coaxed them to sleep. When she returned to the bedroom, she saw Mu Yaja holding a Okamoto set in a daze. When Yun Shirshir saw this, her face immediately turned red. In addition to the condoms, there were sex toys included in the Okamoto set as well. Yu Yu had previously asked the store to give more gifts. The store was kind enough to give these to him. Yun Shirshir didn't open it to take a look. When Mu Yaja returned to the bedroom, he saw that there was such a thing in the drawer that wasn't closed. He took it out and opened it. To his surprise, he saw that it was a sex toy. When he saw her, Mu Yaja raised his head. There was a mischievous and playful look in his eyes. It was obvious that he had an unfathomable look. You bought this? Chapter 1552. Yun Shirshir was so embarrassed that she immediately rushed forward, wanting to snatch this embarrassing thing away. However, Mu Yaja avoided her with a backhand. Caught off guard, she bumped into his arms. Hey! She looked up and glared at him a little angrily. However, she saw Mu Yaja looking down at her with a hint of speculation in his eyes. You've already bought it. Why are you still hiding it? Yun Shirshir felt extremely wronged. It looked like she was going to be accused of this crime. She didn't want to be the scapegoat. Yun Shirshir said aggrievedly, I really didn't buy it. If you didn't buy it, who else could it be? I bought the wrong one. Can't I? As Yun Shirshir explained, she glared at him. I clearly put it in the drawer. Did you go through my drawer? Mu Yaja corrected her sternly. Miss Yun, pay attention to your words. This bedside table is mine. Are you hinting at me by putting this thing here? It was a 2-meter-long bed. On the left side was Mu Yaja's bedside table. Usually he would put his watch and phone on it. Today, Yun Shirshir had been in a hurry, so she stuffed the box directly into the cabinet. When Mu Yaja came back, he saw it when he opened the cabinet to take out the charger. When he first saw it, he was shocked. Why would this stupid woman buy a condom set? However, when he opened it, he was even more stunned. There were actually sex toys inside, and they were especially realistic. A certain man's thoughts went astray. He looked askance at her with a devilishly charming smile. The teasing look in his eyes made her want to dig a hole in the ground and bury her burning face deep in it. Stupid woman, are you hinting at me? Yun Shirshir lowered her head, not daring to look at his teasing gaze. However, she heard him say something indecent in a very serious tone. Could it be that I'm not enough for you, so you want to borrow? His thin lips were right next to her ear. His breath smelled like orchids, and his warm breath blew into her ear, causing her face to turn red and her heart to beat faster. Shut up. Yun Shirshir flew into a rage out of humiliation. Hey, can you be a little more serious? Isn't this serious enough? Mu Yaja, however, did not agree. He hugged her and began to bully her even more ambiguously. You haven't seen my indecent side yet. Do you want to see it? No, I don't want to, she answered without thinking. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a mischievous smile. So cold. I thought you would be looking forward to it. Hey! He actually dared to tease her. This man was getting worse and worse. Yun Shirshir was angry and embarrassed, but she saw Mu Yaja looking at her expectantly. Since you've already bought the product, why don't you try it and see what effect it has? No need. Are you being shy? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. He liked the shy expression on her face when he teased her. The more he looked at it, the more he found it interesting. You stop fooling around. Yun Shirshir frowned, but Mu Yaja could not help but hug her and sit her on his body, coaxing her. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. He would not tease her anymore. Chapter 1553. Once he kissed her, he couldn't bear to leave. She was so beautiful that he didn't know what was going on. The room was filled with tenderness and love. For the next few days, Xianxia's schedule was packed to the brim. First, there was the grand opening ceremony of Lethal Beauty. Xianxia and the main cast and crew attended the ceremony. Before the ceremony ended, they left the venue in a hurry and boarded a plane to Paris. After the first episode of The Love Diary was aired, the response was very strong. Without a doubt, it became the #1 show in the Golden Entertainment ratings. The production team promoted the Lucky Couple brand. On Tieba and forums, the number of discussions about the Lucky Couple increased rapidly. Xianxia became popular. Although she had been popular for a while due to the promotion of the green apple, after the broadcast of The Love Diary, her popularity rose to a considerable level and attracted the attention of everyone. Xianxia's team, on the other hand, was even more relentless in their promotion efforts. Hence, the script for the second episode was changed at the last minute. The production team spent a huge amount of money to draft a new script, and the entire team flew to Paris for the recording. Before the recording, they released a notice on Weibo that the Lucky Couple would be having a sweet time in Paris. The fans of the Lucky Couple were looking forward to it. Actually, after the first episode was aired, many die-hard fans of Xianxia went to Xianxia's Weibo to shout insults. However, most of the fans maintained a rational attitude and were more upright. They knew that this was just a reality show and they were just there to watch it. They didn't take it too seriously. Even the younger fans were turned into fans by Xianxia's good looks. She was too beautiful. In the first episode, Xianxia won a lot of praise with her clear and fashionable makeup and flawless outfit. Moreover, she was a newcomer and didn't have any dark history. Hence, even if someone wanted to defame her, they couldn't do it. Even the production team did not expect that the first episode of the show would achieve such unprecedented viewership ratings. After this episode, more producers took notice of Xianxia, a newcomer with a strong momentum. She had just debuted and she was already so popular. Therefore, many film crews and advertisers approached Xianxia and began to discuss cooperation. Xianxia had received a lot of endorsements for Xianxia, and his hands were about to go limp. However, there weren't many offers. Most of them were cameos or supporting roles. The main reason was that there weren't any good scripts. What time was it now? It was the off-season in the entertainment industry. There were no good scripts. Xianxia restrained himself. If there were no good scripts, he would not accept them. After all, there were very few good scripts like The Green Apple and Lethal Beauty. Only a few books were published in a year. As soon as the plane landed, Xianxia ran to the airport and threw up all over the place. There was no other reason. She had boarded the plane on an empty stomach. Then, she ate some bread on the plane and felt very uncomfortable in her stomach. When the plane landed, it was extremely unstable and she was dizzy. She endured it until she reached the ground. When she reached the washroom, she could no longer hold it in and vomited until tears flowed out. He was too tired. She hurriedly followed her in and gave her wet wipes. When she came out after cleaning herself up, Xianxia got a fright. "Xianxia, what's wrong?" "It's nothing." Xianxia coughed dryly and explained, "Maybe I ate bread on the plane and then my stomach felt uncomfortable." Chapter 1554. Are you all right? Xianxia was a little worried when he saw how pale and weak Xianxia looked. Xianxia shook her head. "I'm fine. I'll be fine after resting for a while at the hotel." Xianxia did not arrange for today's filming schedule. Hence, according to the script, once the filming started, Xianxia had to pick him up at the airport as his girlfriend. Hence, there was a crew that followed Xianxia's flight and started filming the moment he boarded the plane. Xianxia furrowed his brows and did not think much of it. However, just as the crew's car arrived at the airport, before Xianxia could even get into the car, she felt the world spinning before her eyes. Then, the world turned dark and she fainted. "Ah, Xianxia." Shi's surprised cry for help was heard. At the end of her line of sight, she saw Xianxia rushing toward her in a panic. After that, she did not know anything. When she woke up, she was in the hospital. When she opened her eyes, she saw the snow-white ceiling. She could hear a foreign doctor talking to Xianxia. She had learned French before, so she could understand some of it. When she suddenly heard the word food poisoning, she frowned slightly. Her thoughts were in a mess, but she felt that something was amiss. Food poisoning? How did I get food poisoning? The doctor left after giving her some instructions. Qin Zhou told his assistant to take good care of her and left in a hurry. Xianxia asked about it. Mu Shi, what happened? Did the doctor say what the cause was? Why did she faint for no reason? Mu Shi furrowed her brows and answered, Qin Zhou said that the diagnosis is that you have food poisoning. In addition, you were too tired, so you fainted temporarily. Xianxia was stunned for a moment. Food poisoning? How could that be? Other than a piece of bread, she only drank a bottle of drink on the plane. All of a sudden, Xianxia frowned. She vaguely remembered that the drink tasted strange. She took a sip and felt that the taste was a little strange. However, she was really too thirsty and only drank a few mouthfuls before putting it down. During the entire flight, her stomach was very uncomfortable, and she repeatedly went to the bathroom several times. Could it be because of the drink? Her assistant asked indignantly, Sure, do you remember what you drank on the plane? Qin Zhou suspects that someone is trying to harm you. I only had a piece of bread and a drink. The bread is fine, but the drink tastes weird. Perhaps ordinary people wouldn't be able to detect that strange smell. However, her sense of taste was especially sensitive, so she immediately tasted something strange. Xianxia told her assistant the truth. Mu Shi took it seriously when she heard that. Where's Qin Zhou? He went to look into it. Sure, wait a moment, I'll mention this to President Qin. With that, she walked to the balcony with her phone and gave her manager a call to explain the situation. There's such a thing? When Qin Zhou heard this, he suddenly cursed and then angrily hung up the phone. After Xianxia was done with the foredrip, Mu Shi accompanied her to the hotel she was staying at. As the situation was not very serious, she was discharged after taking some nutrient fluids and medicine. The next day, early in the morning, Qin Zhou knocked on the door of her room. Xianxia was already done washing up. When she opened the door, Qin Zhou stormed in with an assistant in tow. Chapter 1555. Xianxia recognized this assistant at a glance. It was the person who had bought her bread and drinks yesterday. It was her who had passed the bread and drinks to her. As she was Qin Zhou's personal assistant, Xianxia naturally trusted her and accepted it politely without any suspicion. When Mu Shi told Qin Zhou about this situation yesterday, he immediately thought of this person. At first, he interrogated her and she refused to admit it. Later, he used some tricks and she finally admitted it in tears. It turned out that this little assistant was Gu Xingzi's die-hard fan. The reason why she chose to become an artist's assistant and managed to get close to Qin Zhou was that she hoped to be able to get close to her idol. In the end, not long after she became his assistant, Qin Zhou terminated his contract with Gu Xingzi. After that, Qin Zhou started to take care of Xianxia. She was narrow-minded and suspected that Xianxia must have chased Gu Xingzi away because she wanted to be promoted. As Qin Zhou's assistant, she could only watch as Gu Xingzi and Xianxia got so close. When she saw Gu Xingzi's admiration for Xianxia in the love diary, she could not take it anymore. For a moment, she even resorted to underhanded means to teach Xianxia a lesson. Fortunately, she was timid and only did something to Xianxia's drinks, so the matter did not get too serious. However, Qin Zhou still felt a chill run down his spine. He thought of how a disaster had happened to the people around him. This matter was not considered serious, but if this person was more ruthless and directly poisoned Xianxia, at the thought of this, Qin Zhou was filled with hatred. He called for someone to teach this assistant a lesson and teach her a lesson. To be able to get to this point, Qin Zhou was naturally capable. With just a few tricks, he managed to tame this assistant. Just as this assistant entered Xianxia's room, she knelt in front of her in tears and kowtowed repeatedly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hurt you. It's my fault, I'm heartless, Xianxia. I'm sorry. Xianxia immediately realized what was going on. Did you do it? The man nodded with difficulty. His eyes were red and swollen, but he didn't dare to look at her. Xianxia's lips twitched coldly, but she didn't say anything in the end. Qin Zhou said to her, later. When we return to the country, I'll send her to the police station. No need. You forgave her just like that? However, Qin Zhou was somewhat disapproving. We can't let her off so easily. At most, we'll let her have a taste of what it's like to be poisoned. Yun Xianxia replied blandly. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Hearing this, Qin Zhou smiled knowingly. Then, he said to his assistant, who didn't dare to raise her head, Did you hear that? There's still some leftover drinks from you and Xianxia yesterday. Finish them yourself. The assistant's eyes widened. Oh my God. The drinks that Yun Xianxia finished yesterday were still in her bag. More than half of the bottle was untouched. Yun Xianxia was about to collapse from vomiting after drinking a few mouthfuls. Then, after she finished half of the bottle, wouldn't she have diarrhea and vomit? She would be tortured to death. Half of her life would be gone. She would rather be sent to the police station. Qin Zhou stared angrily and said, Why? You're not willing? I'm willing. Chapter 1556. The moment she finished the drink, her expression changed. She clutched her stomach in pain. She reacted quickly and violently. Get out of here. Qin Zhou was still angry and kicked her. The assistant rolled on the ground and ran away. Yun Xianxia gave her manager a teasing look and could not help teasing him. Mr. Qin, I didn't expect that there would be a day when you make a mistake. Qin Zhou had a good eye for people. He did not expect that there would be such a troublemaker around him. Qin Zhou coughed awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. Have you gotten over the jet lag? Barely. Yun Xianxia thought that jet lag was not that easy to get over. Are you still feeling unwell? Yun Xianxia raised her eyebrows. Of course. How can I recover so quickly? I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't discipline her well. I'm sorry. Qin Zhou said guiltily. Yun Xianxia said helplessly, It's okay. This is not what you want. Have a good rest. We'll have to prepare for the makeup later. The program will be recorded in the afternoon. Can you take it? If you can't, I'll contact the program team and ask them to postpone the recording. Yun Xianxia shook her head. It's okay. It's not that serious. That's good. Qin Zhou nodded. Only then was he relieved. Xianxia had experienced something similar in the past. An anti-fan handed him a drink with superglue backstage. Out of his unconditional trust in his fans, Xianxia unscrewed the cap and took a sip. He fainted on the spot. On the way to the hospital, he regained consciousness and vomited blood several times. Qin Zhou was completely frightened. He did not know what was in the drink and thought that it was highly toxic. When he was sent to the hospital, it was diagnosed that the superglue in the drink had damaged the mucous membranes of his throat and esophagus. He was fine after a gastric lavage. However, his work had affected him greatly. He rested for more than 2 months before he recovered. Because of this incident, it caused a huge sensation. The funny thing was that the anti-fan was still underage. Under the pressure of public opinion, Xianxia even pleaded for the student to be forgiven by the law. After all, he was a public figure. He had to show generosity and love. At that time, Qin Zhou was so angry. If not for the fact that the anti-fan was underage, he would not have been able to hold himself back. He would have used some means to punish this crazy anti-fan. The doctor said that if he had been sent to the hospital a little later, the consequences would have been even more serious. Because of this incident, Xianxia had serious repercussions. His stomach problem was very serious, and he couldn't do without gastric medicine. This incident left a deep shadow in Qin Zhou's heart. He had once blamed himself deeply for this. Even though he was a public figure and had to endure this kind of negative damage, he still felt guilty for not being able to protect his artist. Xianxia comforted him, saying that he had nothing to do with it. He was the one who had let his guard down and drank the drink handed to him by a stranger. However, Qin Zhou still couldn't let go of this matter. He was still brooding about it. Therefore, Yun Xianxia's incident this time made him even more alarmed. It seemed that he needed to reorganize the people in his team. Otherwise, this kind of incident would happen again. He could not stand by and watch his woman get hurt a second time. The program team sent a message to Yun Xianxia to get ready for her makeup. Chapter 1557. The stylist started to work on Xianxia's makeup for today's date. Because it was recorded in Paris, it had a romantic theme. In the first episode, Xianxia's stylish makeup caused a heated discussion on Weibo. Her flawless good looks made countless people become her fans. Xianxia's team spent a lot of money to hire a top styling team. Therefore, during this period of time, whether it was attending press conferences or opening ceremonies, Xianxia's stylish clothes always became a beautiful scene. For a time, she was in the limelight. Xianxia's facial features were very sculptural. Her facial features were deep and her eyes were exquisite. Together with her makeup, she was flawless. Her skin was very good. Therefore, she could do the makeup that many Asian actresses could not do. This time, for Louis Vuitton's endorsement blockbuster, Xianxia tried on a European retro look. Her deep-set eyes, seductive eyeliner, seductive gaze, and bright red lips were especially stunning. It caused an uproar in the fashion industry. Even Xianxia was stunned. Oh my God! It turned out that makeup could really change a woman's temperament. She always thought that she could not do such a thing. In the end, when the video was released, Xianxia, who had always been sharp-tongued, did not say anything. It was too beautiful. Her fashion sense was too strong. Xianxia could not help but think that he should start to make a bold and decisive move for her in the fashion industry. After the makeup was done, Xianxia edited the script and officially started to prepare for the filming. The film crew arrived and started to film. The script was designed for Xianxia to go on a second date with Xianxia in Paris. They went to the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. Then, they had a passionate conversation in the most romantic restaurant. As the world's most famous romantic city, it was also one of the world's sexiest cities. Ernest Hemingway once said, "If you were lucky enough to live in Paris when you were young, then no matter where you go in the future, this memory will follow you for the rest of your life." The recording of the second episode of The Love Diary took a long time. Some scenes might only take a few minutes, but it took a lot of time to record. Even though it was a live recording, everything had to be done according to the script. If the director team was not satisfied, they would have to redo it. Because the hug between Xianxia and Xianxia when they met at the airport did not create a moving scene, the director directly cut it off and redid it. However, this was not the most tiring part of reality shows. Live recording, from the moment you open your eyes, there are cameras all around you. On the way to the rendezvous, cameras were installed at all four corners of the car. Xianxia felt a little uncomfortable. However, because they were in the middle of a recording, no matter how uncomfortable she felt, she could not show it. She could only endure the discomfort and force a smile. Xianxia, on the other hand, was keenly aware that she was not feeling well. What happened? He bowed his head and asked with concern, "You don't look good." As he spoke, he reached out and gently touched her face. His fingertips brushed against a layer of cold sweat. He could not help but frown. She was sweating, of course. It was not because of the hot weather. It was so cold outside the window. Cold sweat could only be because she was not feeling well. She was not feeling well? Chapter 1558. Therefore, her posture was a little stiff when they hugged. The director was not satisfied, so he asked for a retake. Xianxia actually said lines that were not in the script in front of the camera. Xianxia's brain suddenly stopped working. She did not know how to answer. "You're sweating," Xianxia reminded her. He took out his handkerchief and carefully wiped the cold sweat on her forehead. His eyes could not hide his love for her. Xianxia looked up and caught a flash of heartache in his eyes. She could tell that he was not acting. He really cared about her. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. Her shoulders shrunk a little, and it was clear that she was a little conflicted. Xianxia's expression froze. Her movements were very small. At an angle that was not easily seen by the camera, she said no to his intimacy and concern. Her body language told him that this was just a reality show. She was acting. Her subtext was telling him not to get too involved in the show. She would take it seriously. Xianxia felt a sharp pain in his heart. However, he saw her smile slightly and said slowly, "I just arrived in Paris not long ago. I'm still jet-lagged. Because of today's date." I was a little nervous last night. I didn't have a good rest. This was the content of the script. There was not a single extra word. Gu Xingzi's eyes dimmed. He was a little disappointed. She was actually resisting him. Gu Xingzi adjusted his anxious mood. However, his face showed a flawless smile. He continued to record according to the content of the script. After a day of recording, Xianxia returned to Sweet Home. The production team had set up an apartment in Paris. It was called Sweet Home. There were more important scenes to be recorded in this apartment. Xianxia returned to her room. Naturally, there were cameras in the room. She went into the bathroom and took a shower. After putting on a bathrobe, she came out and put on a facial mask. Then, she said goodnight to the camera and went to bed. She usually didn't have the habit of wearing facial masks. In this aspect, she seemed to be more lazy. However, for some reason, even though she didn't have the habit of diligently maintaining her skin, the quality of her skin was still too good. However, the reason why Xianxia was wearing a facial mask on the show was because Qin Zhou had accepted a facial mask advertisement. So, she naturally had to show it on the show. After turning off the lights, Xianxia did not fall asleep immediately. Although her eyes were closed, her mind was filled with complicated thoughts. The look in Gu Xingzi's eyes still lingered in her mind. In fact, the superstar did not make it as obvious as he did in today's show during the previous filming. In the past, he had always restrained himself and kept his complicated feelings for her buried in the bottom of his heart. However, during today's recording, his emotions were a little out of control. In his eyes, there was an ambition that she had never seen before. It was the kind of undisguised ambition. It made her heart skip a beat. She had never seen Gu Xingzi like this before. She felt that he was different from before. For a moment, she lay in bed and couldn't fall asleep for a long time. Many thoughts were running through her mind. Hence, the next morning, when Qin Zhou and the stylist knocked on the door, they saw Xianxia with dark circles under her eyes. "You didn't sleep well last night?" Qin Zhou looked at her as if he had seen a ghost. Xianxia sighed and said, "I couldn't sleep." Qin Zhou frowned and asked, "Is there something on your mind?" Chapter 1559. Qin Zhou furrowed his eyebrows. "Is there something on your mind?" Xianxia did not know whether to shake her head or nod her head. Qin Zhou looked at her deeply and sighed. "Xia, you've been in a bad state recently. It seems like there's something on your mind. Is it convenient for you to tell me?" Xianxia furrowed her eyebrows slightly. She had a complicated look in her eyes. "Is it not convenient for you to tell me?" "No." Xianxia sighed. "I don't know where to start." Qin Zhou's expression became even more complicated. The two of them kept quiet. However, Xianxia did not know that Qin Zhou was very secretive about her thoughts. She must have felt troubled. She must have felt uneasy about Gu Xingzi taking the initiative to get close to her. "Don't think too much about everything." Qin Zhou patted her shoulder and said, "Let's get ready for filming." In Paris, the filming took a whole week. The filming was supposed to last 3 days in the show's script, but it actually took them a whole week. In order to take advantage of the situation, the production team was constantly striving for perfection. Therefore, for every scene, they were almost nitpicking, trying to be as perfect as possible. Of course, the editing did not let down the production team's good intentions. The romantic atmosphere and heart-pounding interactions were even more exciting than the first episode. The selection of locations by the production team was especially romantic. In the early morning, Xianxia and Gu Xingzi were at the west end of the Swan Trail. This was the time when the Swan Trail was the most beautiful. Perhaps only lovers could experience the poetic and picturesque atmosphere of this place. The two of them walked under the quiet shade of the trees. Their fingers intertwined as they walked all the way to the west. The cameraman especially used silhouettes, so the editing effect was as beautiful as a painting. Every frame was as perfect as a portrait. In the evening, Gu Xingzi brought her to the Misty Trail. Just the name, Misty Trail, gave people a mysterious and romantic feeling. The production team did not know about this scenic spot. Gu Xingzi had been here before when he was filming in Paris. The Misty Trail was hidden in a place that was less visited by people. At the end of the misty path was the misty castle, which was filled with mesmerizing greenery. It was Xianxia's first time seeing such a retro and magnificent castle. This castle was also the location of the Hollywood blockbuster, Vampire. The castle was a classic European medieval retro style. The winding vines on the walls, the withered branches in winter, and the gloomy weather made people feel calm. After the filming ended, Xianxia returned to China. At the same time, The Green Apple completed its final post-production phase and officially entered its busy promotional period. As soon as they got off the plane, Xianxia received a notice and was summoned to the set. Qin Zhou brought her to report to the set of Lethal Beauty without stopping to rest. The filming of Lethal Beauty was about to start. At Hengdian Studios, all the staff members had already arrived. Many of the main creators had joined the cast one after another. Xianxia was the last to arrive. Because of this, when Director Gu heard that Xianxia was late by a day, he slammed the table in anger. Director Gu was especially dissatisfied with Xianxia's late arrival. However, Qin Zhou repeatedly explained that due to conflicting schedules and the delay of the filming in Paris, she joined the cast one day late. A newcomer who just debuted is so arrogant. According to the rules, she joined the cast yesterday and arrived late today. Does she want the whole cast to wait for her? Director Gu was furious. Even when Qin Zhou personally pleaded for leniency, he did not give much face. Xianxia braced herself and stood aside, not daring to breathe. Chapter 1560. Lin Fengtian liked her more. Moreover, Lin Fengtian had a strange temper and had high expectations when it came to filming. However, he separated work and personal life very quickly. Without the surveillance camera, he was easy to get along with. However, Director Gu was not like that. Compared to filming, he was more particular about rules. Without rules, there would be no standards. He was very rigid and liked to follow the rules. It was wrong to be late. Qin Zhou explained, Director Gu, Xianxia is not acting like a big shot. She did not deliberately make the whole crew wait for her. When The Love Diary was filming in Paris, there was a small problem and the filming was delayed by 3 days. That was why she was delayed. Director Gu did not have the patience to listen to him. He waved his hand and said sternly in front of everyone, Qin Zhou, you don't have to say more. You should know me. I like people who are focused. Filming is filming. If you're late, you're late. If you're late, you're late. Xianxia is your artiste and a newcomer with good qualifications. However, it doesn't mean that I will relax my expectations of her just because we're good friends. Impossible. I treat you fairly, no matter who you are. Qin Zhou nodded. He could tell that there was a hidden meaning in Director Gu's words. He smiled and said, Director Gu, you're right. Xianxia may be a newcomer, but she's very humble. You can teach her as much as you want. I'm usually very strict with her. She's a simple child, but she really loves acting. You don't have to say anything. She'll definitely work hard. If she doesn't listen to you in the crew, you can just tell me. Director Gu narrowed his eyes but did not say anything. He was very satisfied. Qin Zhou's words were giving him face. Actually, there were many people in the crew and their relationships were complicated. Therefore, he had to be careful about what he said, even if he was the director. Xianxia was late and Qin Zhou ran over to greet him. Although he was angry, he did not lose his temper. After all, they had been friends for many years. His outburst earlier was just for show. After all, the other staff members were present, and so many eyes were watching. If someone was late, he would just brush it off with a few perfunctory words. Where would his prestige come from? After all, he couldn't treat them differently, right? The other actors and crew members were present, including Lin Ji. He was the director and the most important person in the crew, so he had to show his authority. However, Qin Zhou accepted it with a smile on his face, helping him smooth things over. Moreover, Director Gu liked obedient actors and he also approved of Xianxia. Now that she had established her reputation, it was time to stop while she was ahead. Therefore, after exchanging a few pleasantries with Qin Zhou, he waved his hand and asked the staff to arrange a room for Xianxia. After arranging the rooms, it was time to prepare the luggage. Xianxia made a report and went back to get some thick clothes. After a while, the temperature would drop, and the clothes she had brought to Paris were too thin. Director Gu approved. Just as Xianxia was about to head home, she received a call from Wuxia. Have you returned? Yes, I just got off the plane. Where is it? I'll pick you up. No need. Qin Zhou sent me home. Chapter 1561. Unfortunately, they were only together for a short while before they were separated for a long time. She would not be able to return home for a few months while she was filming. She spent more time apart than together. Occasionally, she could apply for leave to go home, but it was only for a short while before she had to rush back to the set. In addition, during the promotional period for The Green Apple, she had to fly around the country for road shows. She really wanted to cherish every second of her time. Wuxia sat in the car with a slight smile on his face. She was back. He wished he could descend from the sky and hug her tightly. He missed her. He could not hold back the longing in his heart. With one hand on the steering wheel, Xianxia's apologetic voice came through the Bluetooth earpiece in his ear. But I went back to get some thick clothes. I'm leaving soon. Leaving? The smile on his face froze. He raised his eyebrows and looked a little angry. Where are you going again? The word again made Xianxia's heart tremble slightly. Where are you going again? This question was not considered a question, but it stunned her. She missed him too after not seeing him for 7 days. It was only 7 days, but it felt like a century. When she was in Paris, she could only communicate with Wuxia through text messages. Because it was a live show, all calls were prohibited. Therefore, she could only stare at the screen and imagine him on the other end of the phone as she looked at the lifeless words on the screen. He felt the same way. He had not heard her voice for 7 or 8 days. He had held back his longing for her until today. Yesterday, she sent him a text message saying that she would be back today. When he heard the news, he felt his heart beating faster for the first time in his life. Therefore, when he arrived at the office early in the morning, even Minyu was surprised. A few days ago, when Wuxia was in the office, his face was gloomy and cold all the time. His eyes were filled with anger that he had nowhere to vent. Many of his assistants and subordinates felt especially depressed when they entered his office. They lowered their heads and did not even dare to breathe. However, this morning, they could tell that their boss was in a good mood. Even though he pretended to be calm on the surface, his heart was filled with anticipation for her return. Therefore, in the afternoon, he deliberately ended the meeting early. On his way home, he heard the words, "I'm leaving soon." Where was she going? Wuxia could not help but feel a little angry. He stopped the car by the roadside and frowned. He held himself back from venting his anger on her over the phone. Was work that important? She was so important that she could ignore his feelings. For the first time in his life, he hated her work so much. That day, she left for Paris to film a show. In the morning, she called him to inform him that she was going. Her tone was careful, and she only said that while she was in Paris, she was not allowed to call him and could only send him text messages. At that time, he felt dissatisfied. You're my woman. Now you're in Paris, filming a reality show with another man, and you're asking me not to call you. Xianxia, you don't think this is too much, do you? Xianxia was stunned. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone and no one spoke. It was obvious that she felt guilty and guilty. After a long silence, she said, "I'm sorry." Wuxia did not want to hear her sorry, so he hung up the phone. Chapter 1562. Initially, he had wanted to give her the cold shoulder. However, after just one night, he started to miss her and sent her a text message. She replied with an emoji. The text message was very boring. Looking at the black text on the white background, he could not stop imagining her expression. She was finally back in the country. While he was jumping for joy, she said that she was going home to get her clothes and was about to leave. Where was she going? As an artiste, she was busy with work and rarely spent time with her family. Although the pay was high, did he care about it? He let her work and do what she liked to do to give her respect. However, this did not mean that he did not care. He cared a lot. He did not like it when she used the time that belonged to him to spend on work. Was it because of that little pay of a few million yuan? He had so much in just a few minutes. But he missed her. He missed her all the time. It was not just a few minutes. Xianxia held the phone tightly and listened to the man's heavy breathing. She knew that he must be very angry, but he could not bear to throw a tantrum at her and was trying his best to hold it in. Just as she was feeling guilty, Wuxia asked in a deep voice, "Did you miss me?" "Yes, stay with me tonight. Don't go anywhere." Xianxia frowned and said, "The production team notified me to join the set. I applied for leave to come out, so I have to go back to the set after getting my clothes." Wuxia hung up the phone in frustration. As she listened to the continuous beeping sound from the receiver, her eyes welled up with tears for a moment. When she reached home, the two little munchkins were sitting in the living room and watching TV. The moment they saw her, the two little fellows rushed over and squeezed into her arms. The little guy was still growing. Xianxia noticed that he had grown a little taller in the 7 days she had not seen him. He had obviously grown a little taller. When she stood next to Xianxia, the difference was not as big as before. Xianxia's height did not change much. However, Yu had been feeding him delicious food every day at home, so his face had become chubbier. It was pink and adorable. Xianxia rubbed her face against them intimately. When she looked up, she saw that there was only one television in the living room. "Where's Daddy?" Xianxia looked around. "Is he not at home? Daddy isn't back yet." Xianxia hugged Xianxia tightly and refused to let go. He hadn't seen her for a few days. When he saw her come home, he couldn't wait to stick his hands and feet to her body and refused to let go. Xianxia smiled dotingly and picked him up. Why did it get even heavier? "Xianxia, you've really put on weight." She could not help but tease him. Xianxia blushed and asked nervously, "Is Mommy unable to carry Xianxia?" "A little." Xianxia pretended to be serious and nodded purely to tease him. Xianxia panicked when he heard this. No way. He didn't want to grow up or put on weight. Otherwise, his mommy wouldn't be able to carry him. That way, he wouldn't be able to cuddle in his mommy's arms and act like a spoiled child. When he thought of this, he was alarmed and scared. Hence, he immediately said, "Then I'll start losing weight tomorrow." Xianxia flicked his forehead. "Idiot. You're not allowed to. You're still growing. Eat more so that you can grow taller and stronger." As she spoke, she kissed his pink cheeks. His soft texture was like tofu that melted in her mouth. Chapter 1563. Yu snorted and said, "Mommy, do you really believe what this fellow says? Don't be fooled by how confident he looks now. When I'm done cooking, he'll be like a little pig again." Xianxia burst into laughter when she heard this. Xianxia, who was in her arms, pursed his lips awkwardly and retorted, "No way. I'm not like what you say. I'm not a little pig." Yu ignored him as he said this. He turned around and walked up to her enthusiastically. He took the suitcase from her and was about to carry it to the walk-in closet. "Mommy, let me help you pack your suitcase and put it away." Xianxia was stunned and stopped him. "Yu, Mommy came home to pick up a few thick coats." Yu froze and turned around in surprise. "Mommy, do you mean that you're leaving again tonight?" "Yes. Mommy, where are you going?" Xianxia felt aggrieved when he heard this. "Aren't you going to stay at home?" "Mommy has work to do tonight, so I have to rush back to the set. I'm going home this time because I applied for leave from the set." Xianxia's eyes were filled with guilt. Yu felt a sharp pain in his heart when he heard this. He had waited for so long for his mommy to come home, but they had only been together for a short while before they had to face a long separation. He started to feel anxious. This house was so big, but it was empty. Every day, there was only him and Xianxia, as well as the few servants and nannies. Xianxia had hired a few nannies to take care of them. However, Yu did not want such care. He could take care of himself. He only wanted his mommy. He instinctively opened his mouth and wanted to say, "Mommy, don't work anymore. I'll take care of you, okay?" However, when the words reached his throat, he didn't know how to say them. Yu took a deep breath and dropped her hands weakly. She had no choice but to drag the suitcase into the walk-in closet and take out all the clothes that Xianxia had brought to Paris. Then, she took a few thick cotton-padded jackets and put them in. When Xianxia carried Xianxia into the walk-in closet, she saw Yu stuffing some first-aid medicine into her suitcase. Mommy's physique wasn't very good. In winter, it was easy for her to catch a cold. Therefore, in addition to warm clothes, he also put some medicine. Yu was so meticulous that she even put in the knee pads. He knew that his mommy was going to film a period drama. It was going to be winter soon. He was worried that his mommy's costume would be too thin and her knees would catch a cold. No matter how big or small, he would take care of everything for her. He was only worried that this careless and stupid mother of his would only care about filming and not take care of herself when filming. Therefore, he had to take care of everything for her sake. As Yu tidied up the suitcase, he muttered, "Can I take leave from the filming crew?" "What's wrong?" "There's a parent-teacher conference during the semester." "Mommy, can you attend it?" Before Xianxia could speak, Yu suddenly slapped his head and said, "How could I forget that Mommy can't attend it?" Yu lifted his head and looked at her hesitantly. Suddenly he sighed. Mommy is a public figure now. There are posters of Mommy endorsements all over the streets. However, I can't tell anyone that the beautiful person on the poster is my mommy. When Xianxia heard this, her heart ached terribly. Chapter 1564. He chased after the car for a few steps before Xianxia held his hand and they went home. After Wuxia left the company, he was still angry and did not go home immediately. He went to a cafe and ordered a cup of coffee. When the coffee was served, he left without taking a sip. When he reached home, he turned on the light at the entrance and saw that the living room was cold and silent. There was no sign of life at all. He leaned against the entrance, disappointment and coldness flashing across his deep eyes. He walked to the sofa and sat down, letting his body sink into the sofa. She was not home. The two little guys should be asleep by now. However, the house seemed incomplete without one person. Time passed slowly. He sat on the sofa but did not want to move for a moment. He kept switching his phone screen. There were no messages, WeChat messages, or calls. How could this woman ignore him like this? Was she angry because he had hung up on her? She was angry and did not want to talk to him anymore, was she? If that was the case, why didn't she think about why he had hung up on her? After she came home, she turned around and went back to work. What about him? Was she going to ignore him like this? Wuxia sank into the sofa. After thinking about it, he decided to give her a call. He dialed her number. It rang for a long time, but no one picked up. Wuxia dialed her number again, but this time, her phone was turned off. He suddenly felt uneasy. Why did her phone turn off? Could something have happened to her? At this thought, he suddenly stood up, picked up his car keys on the table, and went out immediately. Before he went out, he took a look at the room. He only left when he was sure that the two kids were sound asleep. The production crew booked 3 floors of a hotel in Hengdian Film City for the celebrities and crew. Xianxia had just gotten out of the car when she saw a few nanny vans parked in front of the hotel. Xianxia carried her suitcase and brought her to her room. He pushed the door open and turned on the lights. A musty smell in the room made Xianxia wrinkle his nose. The room was very small. There was a bedroom for the artiste to rest in, a small study for the artiste to revise her script, and a bathroom. However, Xianxia remembered that he had told the crew that he wanted a bigger room. It was best to have 2 beds, as Shi would be coming over tomorrow. After all, she had been in the production team for so long and needed someone to take care of her. However, in this room, there was only a 1.5-meter bed. Xianxia was instantly enraged. What was going on? She called the production crew and called them over. Xianxia scolded unhappily at the door. What's wrong? Are you trying to bully our Xianxia, a newcomer who just debuted, and you're giving her such a room? So small? There was also a musty smell. Looking at the bed, it was covered in dust. What are you guys thinking? Xianxia saw that Xianxia was angry and gently tugged at his sleeve. But Xianxia pressed her shoulder. Xianxia, don't stop. If I don't say it now, in the future when I'm busy and not on set, who knows how you'll be bullied? If I don't scold him now, I won't learn my lesson. Since he said so, she didn't stop him anymore. Qin Zhou glared at him and scolded him when the crew members of the film crew rushed over. Funding is a little tight. Chapter 1565. Qin Zhou sneered. You think you can treat her differently just because you're short on funds? Lin Ji and Hua Jin are staying in 5-star suites. What kind of room is Xianxia staying in? She's famous and noble. Does our Xianxia deserve to be treated differently? Come here and look at the dust on the bed. Can you sleep if I let you? After a battle of words, Qin Zhou directly scolded that person until his face and ears turned red. Yun Xianxia tried to hold back her laughter. Actually, this room was not that shabby. It was just a relatively shabby room. Qin Zhou was angry because some of the crew members flattered the powerful and stepped on the weak. They supported the famous and stepped on the less famous. That was why he exploded. The man did not dare to offend Qin Zhou. He bowed and apologized. Then he led Qin Zhou to the front desk and changed to a luxurious suite. That was the end of the matter. The new room was not luxurious, but it was much better than Cold Cicada's room. Yun Xianxia dragged her luggage into the room. She sat on the sofa and let out a long sigh. She had just gotten off the plane and was still jet-lagged. As soon as the plane landed, she had rushed back and forth between the crew and home. She felt like her bones were about to fall apart. Qin Zhou wandered around the room. He often went on business trips and flew all over the world. Therefore, he was very particular about the hotel he stayed in. Yun Xianxia would be staying in this room for a long time. Therefore, he had to check her thoroughly before leaving. For example, if there was a problem with the water and electricity, it would be very dangerous if there was a problem with the wiring. If there was a problem with the hot water supply, if the door lock had been tampered with, if there were a few vacuum cameras hidden in the corner, if there were curtains on the balcony, and so on. Celebrities were very particular about staying in hotels. Once, a female celebrity stayed in a hotel in Hong Kong. In the end, the bathroom and the bedroom were all filled with pinhole cameras. Later, it was found that the cameras were planted by the third-rate paparazzi in Hong Kong. Therefore, Qin Zhou paid special attention to privacy. After checking that there was no problem, Qin Zhou walked out of the bedroom and found her leaning on the sofa, asleep. Qin Zhou was stunned. A helpless expression appeared on his face. He walked over and patted her face gently. Xianxia? Yun Xianxia groaned. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's, like a cat mewling lazily. Qin Zhou sighed and pinched her face again. Take a shower before you sleep. You'll catch a cold. Yun Xianxia furrowed her brows. The moment she opened her bloodshot eyes, Qin Zhou was taken aback by this sight. She was too tired. She didn't have a good rest on the plane. Although Qin Zhou was the same as her, a woman's physique couldn't be compared to a man's. He trained diligently and had a strong physique, so he could withstand fatigue. Take a shower, then go to bed and have a good rest. There's nothing to do tomorrow morning, so you can sleep in. I'm going to take measurements in the afternoon and order a few costumes. She nodded. Qin Zhou said a few words of advice and left. Yun Xianxia got up and opened her bag. However, she found that her phone had run out of battery. She charged it and went to the bathroom to take a shower. When she came back from the shower, she found that there were a few missed calls. Chapter 1566. Yun Xianxia pondered for a moment and called back. After a few rings, the call was connected. Mu Yaja's angry voice came from the other end. Why didn't you answer the phone? My phone ran out of battery, so I switched it off. Do you know how worried I was when I couldn't contact you? Mu Yaja almost used satellite positioning to locate her whereabouts. In the end, she told him that her phone had run out of battery. It was a false alarm. It looked like he had been too concerned about her. Stopping the car by the side of the road, Mu Yaja's heart finally settled down with his phone in hand. I'm sorry. I didn't know my phone had run out of battery. I'm sorry for making you worry. On the other end, Yun Xianxia's voice sounded guilty and weak. She sounded like a child who had done something wrong and was very careful. Mu Yaja kept quiet for a moment. He was angry, but he couldn't bear to vent it on her. Hence, he suddenly said, It's okay. I was just worried that something might have happened to you. Okay, then I'm tired. I want to rest now. Xianxia was really tired. Hence, she was eager to go to bed and rest. However, Wuxia didn't say anything.
But
Go and rest. After that, he didn't wait for her response and went silent. Xianxia said, "Good night," and hung up the phone. She tried her best to lift her heavy feet and threw herself onto the bed. When she covered herself with the blanket and her head hit the pillow, she fell asleep almost instantly. Wuxia sat in the car in a daze for a while. Then he stepped on the accelerator and drove back to Xianxia. In the next few days, Xianxia was so busy that she felt dizzy and disoriented. In the entertainment industry, it seemed like there was no limit to how glamorous she could be, but behind the scenes, there was a lot of bitterness. The next day, she slept until noon. Then she got up and put on makeup. In fact, she didn't have the habit of putting on makeup. However, now that she was on set, there were always reporters coming to visit her. Qin Zhou requested her to put on makeup whenever she went out and not to go out without makeup. Xianxia had just finished her lunch when she was dragged by her manager to get her measurements taken for custom-made clothes. Her several sets of clothes were more complicated, and the construction period was faster, but it would still take half a month. After ordering the clothes, it was time for dance training. There were a few dance scenes in the play. Xianxia had some foundation in dancing, but she needed some advanced training. The production crew hired a master dancer to train her and Lin Ji. For the next few days, he was so busy that he didn't even have time to take a breather. After returning to the hotel, she took a quick shower and went to bed. As a result, she only remembered to reply to Yu Yu's message the next morning. On this day, when Wuxia woke up and opened his eyes, he saw Yu Yu lying beside his bed. She was smiling brightly and her eyes were filled with flattery. "Daddy, you're awake." As she spoke, Yu Yu blinked her eyes in an extremely flattering manner. Her long and black eyelashes fluttered, looking especially beautiful. Wuxia was taken aback. "Daddy, did you have a good sleep last night?" The little guy kept flattering and asking about his well-being. Wuxia stared at him. Then, he said in a deep and hoarse voice, "It's not good to offer a treasure for no reason. Daddy, you're wrong. I can't rape you, nor can I steal from you. However, there is indeed something that I need to discuss with you." Chapter 1567. Wuxia raised an eyebrow when he saw how serious he was, as if he had something important to discuss with him. "What is it?" "Daddy, it's like this." With that, he snuggled into his father's blanket and lay on his chest with a grin. Cupping his cheeks, he fawningly gave him 2 kisses before asking with smiling eyes, "My dear daddy, are you free today?" Yu Yu frowned when she heard that. "Can I apply for leave?" Wuxia pondered for a moment. "You can, but it depends on what it is." He couldn't help but pinch Yu Yu's rosy cheeks and raised an eyebrow. "Don't keep me in suspense. Just tell me what's the matter." "There's a parent-teacher conference this afternoon. Actually, Mommy's information was not logged in when I entered the school, so the teachers couldn't contact my parents. This time, at least one of my parents has to attend the parent-teacher conference." "You can't go?" Yu Yu said worriedly. "Actually, I also feel that the parent-teacher conference is just a formality. There's no need to go. In the past, before Mommy entered the entertainment industry, she always attended every parent-teacher conference. But now, her identity is special and she can't show up. So, I can only ask Daddy for help. Okay?"
But
Wuxia agreed. "What time in the afternoon?" Yu Yu immediately replied happily, 2 in the afternoon.
But
"I'll be there in the afternoon." "Okay. I'll wait for you at the school. Do you know the school's address?" "Mwah. Daddy is so obedient." Yu Yu was satisfied and kissed him again. She was in a good mood. "But can you promise me something when you go to the parent-teacher conference?" "What is it?" Yu Yu winked and said, "Keep a low profile." Wuxia was amused. "How do you want Daddy to keep a low profile?" "At the very least, don't be too ostentatious. Don't drive those luxurious cars here. I don't want the teachers in the school to think that I'm a rich second generation." Wuxia was amused. "Isn't that so?" Even if he was, he didn't want others to gossip about him. It's so annoying. With that, Yu smiled and said, Daddy, rest for a while more. I'm going to make breakfast. I'll wake you up at 8 o'clock. Where's Xiaoyichen? Morning jog. He and Xiaoyichen woke up early every day. Xiaoyichen was in charge of walking the dog, while he was in charge of breakfast. The division of labor was clear. When Mu Yaja woke up, the two little guys had already been picked up and sent to school. Today is Friday. It had been 7 days since Yun Shishir joined the cast. Another 7 days passed. In total, it seemed like he hadn't seen her for half a month. Every day when he slept alone on the big bed, he felt that half of his arms were empty. He couldn't get used to it. Once he got used to the warmth of a person, he couldn't get used to the coldness of sleeping alone. When he met her, he didn't feel that it was lonely and cold to sleep alone. However, every time he returned home, he would look at the dark room and the empty big bed. He felt that the room was dark and oppressive. He resisted the urge to call her, but she didn't send him a message either. Was she that busy? Chapter 1568. Minyu heard from the film crew that she had been practicing her dance diligently. Apparently, she spent most of her time in the practice room. So busy! He sighed in his heart. Then he sneered and felt a chill in his heart. In a fit of pique, he told himself that he had to give this ignorant woman the cold shoulder. He wanted her to have a taste of what it felt like to be ignored. The parent-teacher conference was originally scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Mu Yaja calculated the time and decided to deal with everything in the morning. If he could, he would move the meeting forward. If he couldn't, he would postpone it to the next day. He took Yu's words to heart. Hence, he called Minyu and asked him to find a low-profile car. Minyu frowned. Boss, I don't understand what you mean. What are you planning to do? Mu Yaja coldly glanced at him. I'm asking you to find me a car that's more low-key. Low-profile? For example, a Volkswagen Phaeton. A Volkswagen Phaeton, so low-profile. Minyu asked, Boss, why do you want to change your car? Mu Yaja replied, I want to keep a low profile. Minyu's mouth opened in surprise. However, he did not say anything and went to find a car for him. After the meeting in the morning, he returned to his office and found that he had 2 missed calls on his phone. He tapped on them and saw that they were from the same unknown number. Mu Yaja sat down at his desk and dialed the number. When the call was picked up, a woman's gentle and polite voice came through. Excuse me, are you Yu's father? Mu Yaja was stunned for a moment and asked, You are? The teacher smiled and said politely, Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry to disturb you. I'm the Dean of Education at Yu's school. My surname is Yuan. Is it convenient for you to come to the school now? Mu Yaja frowned and raised his wrist to look at the time. It was only 10 in the morning. He could not help but feel suspicious. Isn't the parent-teacher conference at 2 in the afternoon? No, it has nothing to do with the parent-teacher conference. Is it convenient for you to come over now? Yu is in a bit of a situation and needs you to come over and take care of it. The teacher's voice was extremely polite. Through the phone, she could feel Mu Yaja's imposing aura. Due to his imposing manner, she didn't dare to say it out loud for fear of angering him. Mu Yaja looked at the time again. Since the teacher called to say that there was an urgent matter for him to deal with, he naturally couldn't ignore it. Even though there was still a video conference coming up, it had to be put aside. Mu Yaja said, Good. I'll be right there. Good. I'll wait for you at the Academic Affairs office. Mu Yaja hung up the phone and got up. He picked up his coat from the hanger and put it on. Just as he opened the door, he bumped into Minyu. He was holding a few proposals and documents from the conference. He had already organized them and was about to go to the conference. However, when he looked up, he saw Mu Yaja ready to go. He was a little surprised. Boss, aren't you hot wearing so much? The heater is on in the conference room. Mu Yaja said decisively, I'm going out. Postpone the conference until I come back. Chapter 1569. Minyu anxiously said, If there's an emergency, leave it to me. Mu Yaja gave him a side glance. Are you going to attend my son's parents' meeting? Minyu. I dare not. Mu Yaja snorted. Then, hurry up and postpone the meeting. Minyu rushed over at once. *CK. So, it's the little master's parents' meeting? He mistakenly thought that Xiao Yichen had caused trouble in school again. In fact, Mu Yaja usually did not attend any parent-teacher conferences or parent-teacher conferences that little Yichen's school had invited. Mu Yaja had always been absent from Xiao Yichen's parent-teacher meetings. Hence, in a sense, Yu's parent-teacher meetings were Mu Yaja's first parent-teacher meetings in his life. When Mu Yaja arrived at the school, the main gate was closed. It was the fourth period of the morning. He parked his car in the parking lot and entered the school. When he reached the administrative office, he could hear the commotion coming from inside, even from outside the door. Among the noisy crowd, only a middle-aged woman's voice was particularly sharp and piercing. Where are Yun Tianyou's parents? Haven't they arrived yet? Didn't they say that they'll be here soon? If I have to say, this child's parents have no sense of responsibility at all. Their child bullied a classmate in school and caused trouble, yet as his parents, they're still not here to settle the matter. How infuriating! A gentle voice hurriedly consoled her. Madam Lin, please calm down. Director Wu, you're still telling me to calm down? How can I calm down? How can I be calm? If your child is beaten up like this, can you still be so calm? Look at my son's forehead, it's bleeding profusely. I wonder if it'll leave a scar in the future. This is too much. A 7-year-old child is bullying in school at such a young age? If he's like this now, what will happen when he grows up? Yun Tianyu looked refined and polite on the surface, but who would have thought that he would do such a thing? In my opinion, when he grows up, he will definitely be the scum of society. The teacher's voice was slightly dignified. Mama Lin, your words are too much. They couldn't just rely on Lin Feng's words to determine the situation. Yu hasn't explained what exactly happened. Let's wait for his parents to come and hear his explanation. However, the woman didn't listen to what the teacher said at all. She said unreasonably, "What's there to explain? It was wrong to hit someone. The child is still young and doesn't know any better. I won't argue with a child. But when his parents came, they had to give me an explanation. Otherwise, there's no way this matter will end just like that." At the same time, there was the sound of someone slamming the table in the office. The person was obviously furious. "Mrs. Lin, please be quiet. The other teachers are in class. Don't disturb the children in the other classes. We will definitely handle this matter fairly for you." It's good that you know. The school was a place to teach and educate people. Don't let some black sheep cause such a foul atmosphere. My child came to school to study, not to be bullied for no reason. Mu Yaja stood outside the door and listened for a while to sort out the logic. Chapter 1570. Based on what the woman had said, he had probably gotten into a fight with another child in school. Hence, the teacher had called him to come to the school to settle the matter. Why would you get into trouble for no reason? He was introverted and did not like to get into fights with others. Why would he hurt another child for no reason? At this thought, Mu Yaja knocked on the door. "Please come in." Mu Yaja pushed the door open and walked in. He saw that the large office was filled with people. Among the unfamiliar crowd, a middle-aged woman was holding a child with bandages on his forehead. The child's eyes were red and swollen, as if he had been crying. He was nestled in the woman's arms and looked aggrieved. Yu, on the other hand, was sitting next to a teacher in a white shirt with a badge on her chest. Compared to the teacher, who was in a terrible fix, Yu was calm and unperturbed. From the beginning to the end, he acted as if nothing had happened and remained silent. In this farce, he did not open his mouth or say a single word. Even though this middle-aged woman was cursing and scolding in front of all the teachers in the academic affairs office, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him and did not say a single word. Or perhaps, he thought that it was pointless to talk to such an uncultured person like Mrs. Lin. If he were to speak, this woman would probably explode in anger. He sat there leisurely, but he looked a little disheveled. There were a few black shoe prints on his well-ironed school uniform, as if he had been in a fight. The moment Mu Yaja stepped through the door, everyone's curious gazes landed on him. He walked in and stood at the entrance. His imposing height of 1. 88 meters made the large academic affairs office seem incomparably small. His extraordinary aura spread to every corner of the office. Even the middle-aged woman could not help but be stunned when she saw him. Before Mu Yajia entered the office, Lin Feng's mother had a lot of imaginations about Yu Yu's guardian. However, she had not expected this man to be so young and shockingly handsome. Too young, too handsome. If it were not for the man's facial features resembling Yu Yu's, she would not believe that this man, who looked to be in his 20s, was Yu Yu's father. Are you Yun Tianyou's father? Lin Feng's mother glanced at him and asked casually. However, Mu Yajia did not seem to hear what she said. He did not even look at her as he walked over to Yu Yu. He bent down slightly in front of him so that they were at eye level. Yu Yu raised her eyes to look at him. Her originally indifferent expression finally changed. She revealed a helpless and ashamed expression. "Daddy, you're here?" Mu Yajia nodded and looked him up and down. He asked gently, "Are you hurt?" His low, magnetic and mellow voice was like an aged red wine, making people who heard it unable to help but be intoxicated. Yu shook her head and smiled. "I'm not hurt." "He's not hurt. It's our son who's hurt." Lin Feng's mother, who was standing behind them, slyly interjected. Mu Yajia ignored her. He carried Yu Yu in his arms and sat down on the chair beside the teacher. The moment he sat down, Yu Yu's discipline master stood up, feeling at a loss as to what to do. Chapter 1571. This man's aura was too intimidating. She was even more nervous than when the provincial education department came to inspect the school. He was clearly so young, but the aura on his body was like he was looking down on all living things. His entire body was exuding the aura of a superior. Even Lin Feng's mother, who had been arrogant from the moment she entered the room, could not help but restrain her attitude and twitch the corner of her lips. In the crowd, the man's presence was too eye-catching. Everyone was intimidated. If he did not speak, no one dared to speak. Mu Yajia first carried Yu Yu in his arms and carefully examined him. There were no injuries on his face. However, when he lifted his collar, he saw a slight bruise on his collarbone. It was not serious, but it was not light either. It looked like he had been hit by something. Of course, it could not have been a fist. It was a little hard, as if he had been hit by something hard. This kind of injury would only be slightly red in the beginning. It would not show. After a while, it would turn into a bruise and appear on the skin. Other than that, there were no obvious injuries. Compared to Yu Yu, the other child's injury was obviously more serious. When he was carried in his arms, he looked at Yu Yu with eyes full of grievance and hatred. It was obvious that these two children had been through an unfriendly war. However, in this war, Yu Yu was obviously the one who had the upper hand. In the past, he had a weak body and would have been at a disadvantage if he fought with other children. However, during this period of time, he had learned some defensive skills from Xiao Yichen. To Xiao Yichen, what he had taught him was just the basics. However, for a child of his age, this kind of skill was incomparably terrifying. Yu Yu was in a daze as he allowed Mu Yajia to examine him carefully. A strange warmth arose from the bottom of his heart. He had not expected this man to suddenly appear in the school. After this incident, the Dean of Academic Affairs had asked him for his parents' number to contact the parents to come to the school. The first thing he had done was give him Li Hanlin's number. However, Li Hanlin had been exposed when he called him. The Dean was furious and asked for his number again. Yu Yu thought about it, but did not give Xianxia any information. Mommy is on set now. She must be very busy. Moreover, she was a public figure now. She could not appear in such an occasion. Where's Daddy? He must be very busy, right? Would he come? Knowing that he was in trouble, would he rush over to help him deal with it? In fact, such a matter could have been handled by Li Hanlin, but for some reason he handed over Mu Yajia's number. Unexpectedly, he arrived in less than half an hour. He must have rushed to the school as soon as he received the call. Yu Yu's heart warmed and she couldn't help but snuggle into his embrace. For the first time in his life, he felt that he had someone to rely on. He thought to himself, it feels good to have a backer. It was a good feeling to be surprised. After Mu Yajia finished checking, he felt relieved. Yu Yu was not injured, which was the best result. As for what exactly had happened, he was not too concerned. He only knew that he should trust his son. He understood Yu Yu's character. He would not have any conflict with a child of his age. Chapter 1572. In Yu Yu's heart, these children were innocent and immature, so he always gave in to them. However, this did not mean that he would not ask about it. Wuxia asked, Yu Yu, what's the matter? Explain it to me. Without waiting for Yu Yu to speak, the woman at the side nagged, What else can it be? You're Yun Tianyou's father, right? Your son injured my son. Let's see how you're going to explain this to my family. Give me an explanation. Wuxia raised a brow in displeasure and raised his head. His eyes, however, instantly turned cold and frosty. It's not polite to interrupt, is it? The woman said unhappily, Didn't you want to ask what's going on? Let me tell you then. I'm asking my son, not you. Wuxia looked at her expressionlessly. His cold and sharp eyes were as sharp as ice blades. So, don't interrupt. You. The woman widened her eyes in anger and looked at him in disbelief. She then said to the discipline master, Teacher. Look at him. This person. He's so rude. The discipline master, however, was secretly criticizing her. Who's the rude one here? Yu Yu's father had always been calm. From the moment he entered the room, he gave off an elegant demeanor. Lin Feng's mother, on the other hand, gave off a rude vibe. However, in front of so many people, he could only keep his words to himself. The discipline master could only swallow his anger and say, Lin Feng's mother, please calm down. Yu Yu hasn't said a word since the beginning. Why don't you let him tell us what happened? Everyone is here. You should at least respect the child. Yu has the right to speak too. The woman's red lips curled in disdain as she muttered under her breath. He did something wrong. What respect is there for him? Her voice was soft, but Wuxia still heard it. He looked at her abruptly. His eyes were as piercing as icicles. The woman felt as if she was being pricked by needles, and her hair stood on end. She glanced at Wuxia, only to see his frighteningly cold face. She shuddered in fear and did not dare to act rashly for a moment. The discipline master patiently asked, Yu Yu, tell us what happened? Nothing. I fought with him, but he's stupid and couldn't win. It's impossible for our Lin Feng to hit others. She pointed at him and said ferociously, Teacher Yuan, Lin Feng has always been a good boy. He gets along well with all the other children in the class. He loves each other. He loves each other. Look at him at such a young age, at such a young age. As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Feng, who was in her arms, burst into tears again. He was really good at acting. Yu Yu raised a brow but did not explain further. Instead, his lips curled into a sinister smile. The unruly curve of his lips was very similar to his father's. You didn't hit me? He paused and muttered to himself for a moment before saying viciously, Oh, you didn't hit me. Then I was bitten by a dog. You! The discipline master immediately stopped him. You, don't talk nonsense. Yu Yu shrugged and obediently stopped talking. He did not want to lower himself to the same level as a childish guy. Anyway, he admitted that he had hit him. Chapter 1573. His mother had taught him from a young age that he could not lie. At the same time, as a man, he had to bear the consequences of his actions. He had to be responsible and responsible. He had always kept that in mind. He had never forgotten it. Wuxia asked again, Who started it? Yu Yu pursed her lips. He started it? Yes. Then you fought back? Yu Yu said truthfully, Yes, he started it. He hit me with a pencil case. I was in pain, so I fought back. So you injured him? Wuxia's gaze was deep. Yu Yu stuck her tongue out and nodded. She did not forget to explain seriously, Daddy, it was legitimate self-defense. The man immediately raised his head and saw Mrs. Lin flatly deny, Our Feng didn't start it. It's clearly your son who started it. He doesn't admit it and even hit back. He's slandering us. After saying that, she rubbed the child's cheeks with heartache. Even though the child's forehead was bandaged, blood was still seeping out. It was a tragic scene. Sigh, my baby Feng has never been wronged like this since he was young. I don't know if this injury will heal or not. Will it leave a scar? It's on his face. Teacher Yuan said, Mrs. Lin, the injury on Lin Feng's forehead is not serious. Maybe it will heal in a few days. It probably won't leave a scar. The wound is quite shallow. Let's not make it so embarrassing. Harmony is the most important thing, right? Harmony is the most important thing. Mrs. Lin frowned. Teacher Yuan, it's easy for you to say that. Harmony is the most important thing? You say that the wound is shallow? Oh, it's not serious. It's not serious because it's not serious? So we're just going to let it go. Fine. If you're going to let it go, call his son over and beat him up for our phone. Let's just let it go. When Teacher Yuan heard that, her expression froze. This Mrs. Lin was too much. How could she say that? It was just a child. How could she make things difficult for a child? Hit my son? When Mu Yaja heard this, he laughed coldly. I'd like to see who dares to touch a single strand of my son's hair. His words were not harsh and his voice was not loud. He had a smile on his face, but he was imposing without being angry. When these words came out, everyone who heard them felt their scalps go numb. Their children don't know their manners, but their parents don't know either? Yu said, Daddy, don't lower yourself to their level. There are so many pairs of eyes in the class who made the first move. What's there to quibble about? Lin Feng attacked first. I let him have his way at first, but he became more and more aggressive, so I had to fight back. In the end, he made the first move, but in the end, he still couldn't beat me. How promising! Frightened by his words, the teacher hurriedly stopped him. You don't talk so much. She had always known that Yun Tianyu was a mature child who surpassed his peers. He was responsible, and humorous. Although he was not the oldest in the class in terms of age, the other children treated him as a big brother. Therefore, she had a good impression of him from the bottom of her heart. Alas, Lin Feng's mother was not easy to get along with. She knew Mrs. Lin better. She was extreme, mean, and had an unforgiving tongue. Her words were especially tricky. Chapter 1574. It was said that he was a judge in the city's supervision department and had a lot of power. Therefore, Teacher Yuan didn't want Yu to offend such a powerful family. She had a good impression of Yu. Yu didn't buy it. Teacher Yuan, didn't you say that you would handle this fairly? I was just telling the truth. Teacher, do you believe me? Of course she believed him. Teacher Yuan had a complicated expression. She looked at Mrs. Lin and then at Yu. After weighing the pros and cons, she sighed, Yu, I believe you. Yu smiled in satisfaction. This Teacher Yuan was quite upright. He liked it. Lin Feng's mother didn't know what to say. Teacher Yuan said that she believed this bastard. What did that make her? So, after half a day, she had become a clown? Lin Feng's mother gritted her teeth and threatened, Teacher Yuan, you have to be responsible for what you say. You don't have any evidence. How can you make such assertions based on the words of a few children? What you hear may be false, but seeing is believing. Did you see it? Yu asked. Interesting. You didn't see it either. What makes you say that? But you can't beat Feng up like that. Mrs. Lin shouted hysterically. Her voice was so loud that it shook the office. Teacher Yuan was embarrassed. On the one hand, Yu's words were obviously more tenable. Logically speaking, this matter was very simple to resolve. Both sides just needed to communicate and apologize to each other. After all, the conflict between children was just a matter of the past. Maybe tomorrow, it would be over with a smile. However, Lin Feng's mother wasn't easy to talk to. She was even more serious than the children and kept asking for an explanation. What explanation could she ask from a child? Therefore, she said, Mrs. Lin, it's normal for children to fight. It's not a big deal. Lin Feng is injured and so is you. I've understood the situation before. Indeed, as Yu said, everyone saw that Lin Feng was the one who started the fight. Still, the boy was in the wrong in this matter. He should not have been so heavy-handed. Lin Feng is also in the wrong. He shouldn't have hit him first. Therefore, both sides should apologize to each other. Let's end the matter here. Impossible. Mrs. Lin reprimanded. It's not over. Teacher Yuan, you're obviously biased toward Yun Tianyu. I don't care. Anyway, you must get Yu Yu's father to give you an explanation for today's matter. Otherwise, when my husband comes to school later, don't blame the scene for being too ugly. These words were clearly a threat. He was clearly threatening Teacher Yuan. Mrs. Lin actually didn't care who was right or wrong. Her child had been injured and wronged, and that was something the heavens couldn't tolerate. Furthermore, she had previously caused such a ruckus in the teaching office. Under so many pairs of eyes, how could she admit defeat? There was no way out of this matter. It was impossible for her to apologize. Hence, she said those harsh words. Teacher Yuan helplessly glanced at another teacher. That teacher understood tacitly and immediately stood up. He took Lin Feng's mother and the other family members to another office and comforted them. After the door was closed, only a few teachers were left in the spacious office. Chapter 1575. Yu Yu sat calmly in Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was expressionless as he watched the drama unfold. Teacher Yuan sat beside Mu Yaja and poured him a cup of tea. Then she started to prepare him mentally. Yu Yu's father, is this your first time coming to school? Why didn't I see you when school started? I didn't see Yu Yu's mother either. We were busy and neglected you. I'm sorry. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes and glossed over it with a few words. Teacher Yuan's heart skipped a beat. This man's voice was so pleasant to the ears. If not for the fact that he was taken, she would have fallen in love with him. Yu Yu looked up and saw a flash of admiration and shyness in Teacher Yuan's eyes. She could not help but twitch her lips. *CK. What was going on? Yu Yu's father, since you're here, why don't you register your name? Teacher Yuan took out the name list. The school would make a contact book for each child. However, Yu Yu's parents' information was not registered. Hence, the school had been urging the child's parents to come to school. In fact, Li Hanlin had come to school when school started. However, because the information did not match, the name list was cleared. Mu Yaja held a pen and scribbled on the name list. Finally, he signed his name. Teacher Yuan glanced at it and was shocked. Your surname is Mu? Yes. She was a little surprised and said, Oh, so Yu Yu doesn't follow your surname? Mu Yaja looked up disapprovingly and asked, Does it matter whose surname he follows? Teacher Yuan was speechless. She exchanged a few pleasantries and said, Of course, it doesn't matter whose surname he follows. His mother is busy. If there's anything in the future, you can contact me directly. Okay. Teacher Yuan paused and then asked tentatively, So, Yu Yu's father, how do you intend to deal with this matter? I'll deal with it as I should. Teacher Yuan hesitated and moved closer to him. She lowered her voice and said, Yu Yu's father, there's something I have to tell you. Lin Feng's father and mother are not simple people. I, on the other hand, am very fond of Yu Yu. Everyone is very regretful that this has happened. But since it happened, we should think of a solution. But you should know that there's no such thing as absolute fairness and justice in this world. Actually, you should not have offended Lin Feng's mother this time. She's mother is the most troublesome person's mother's father. When it comes to Lin Feng, she's unreasonable. She's from a powerful family. We can't do anything to her. But I have a Yu Yu Lin, Yuo's father. Lin Feng's mother's family is very rich. Her husband's family is also very influential. Her husband is a judge. He's not to be trifled with. Yu Yu is also at fault in this matter. So, he should lower his head and admit his mistake. Then, he should apologize to Lin Feng and pay for the medical fees. Then, this matter will be over. Why wouldn't he do it? We don't want to make a big deal out of this matter for Yu Yu's sake. Mu Yaja curled his lips and said coldly, As a teacher, how can you say that in front of a child? Chapter 1576. Mu Yaja said calmly. He paused and raised his head. His voice was cold and soft. Is that what you mean? As soon as he finished speaking, Teacher Yuan's face immediately turned red. It was so red that it looked like blood was dripping from his face. Yu Yu's father, you should know that I don't have any bad intentions. Isn't this for your own good? If Lin Feng's mother calls Lin Feng's father over, I'm afraid that things will get out of hand. Yu Yu looked at Teacher Yuan expressionlessly. He had thought that this teacher was quite upright. He had misjudged her. He wouldn't apologize. Even if he had to apologize and admit his mistakes, Lin Feng should apologize to him first, as he was also in the wrong. That was the basic principle. Mu Yaja didn't think that Teacher Yuan was saying that for Yu Yu's sake. Immoral values. Did she think that by saying that, she would be able to give the child the best education? She had to admit her mistakes when she did something wrong. But that didn't mean that whoever had a stronger family background or a stronger father would have to bow down to the other party. That didn't make sense. Hence, Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "The child is still young. I hope that the education he receives will at least be immoral." Teacher Yuan's words just now are disappointing. Yu Yu's father, please don't misunderstand. I really like Yu Yu. I'm only saying that for your sake. Mu Yaja interrupted her. There's no need for you to think that way. Teacher Yuan's face revealed a dejected expression. Yu Yu said, "Teacher Yuan, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize? Lin Feng was the one who attacked me first. I was just defending myself. The injury on his forehead wasn't caused by me. So why should I apologize?" Yu Yu. Teacher Yuan was helpless. Why did Lin Feng hit you for no reason? I heard from my classmates that it was because you said harsh words that provoked him, so he was unable to restrain his anger and hit you. You shouldn't have scolded him and angered him. I didn't scold anyone. Yu Yu said innocently with a kind expression. Lin Feng had been humiliated and infuriated, so he had attacked first. At this point, Mu Yaja focused on the main point. Why did you have a conflict? Yu Yu suddenly pursed her lips and stopped talking. There can't be a conflict for no reason. Mu Yaja hugged his son's shoulders and said patiently, "Tell Daddy, What is the reason?" "Alright, I'll tell you." Helplessly sucking in a deep breath of cold air, he answered, "That's because he insulted me and Mommy." The reason why Yu Yu had insulted him was because Lin Feng had spoken rudely first. Yu Yu and Lin Feng were in the same class when they were in kindergarten. At that time, Lin Feng and Yu Yu didn't like each other. Everyone in the class, regardless of gender, liked to play with Yu Yu. They stuck to him and said, "Yu Yu long and Yu short" all the time. However, no one was willing to play with him. Lin Feng was used to being spoiled at home. Therefore, he was arrogant and had a strong physique. Many children stayed away from him. Chapter 1577. Yu Yu could not gain any advantage over the tall and burly Lin Feng. At that time, the kindergarten teachers knew very well that they could not afford to offend Lin Feng's parents. In comparison, Yu Yu was much easier to bully. After all, who would look up to a single-parent family? Everyone saw the mother and son pair as small fries. Who would be willing to offend someone whom they could not afford to offend for Yu Yu? The neighbors in the neighborhood mocked and ridiculed Xianxia, not to mention the snobbish teachers in the kindergarten. Because Lin Feng wasn't an ordinary child, the teachers didn't dare neglect him. Regarding this matter, they dealt with it as if it was a small matter, and a small matter was nothing. Yu Yu felt extremely aggrieved, but he could not say anything. After he got injured, he did not dare to say anything to Xianxia. Even when he took a bath and treated his wound, he did it secretly. Firstly, he was worried that his mother would be sad if she saw it. Secondly, he was afraid that his mother would find him in school. Lin Feng's family background was special. At that time, their family background was average and could not be compared to his. It was also from then on that Yu Yu made up his mind to become stronger and let his mother live a happy life in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. That was what he thought, and he did it. Now, not to mention his father, even with his own strength, he did not need to be wary of Lin Feng's family background. Teacher Yuan, on the other hand, had good intentions. She was afraid that Lin Feng's parents would not let this matter go and continue to pester them. She tried every possible way to turn this matter into a small matter, which would make it easier for her. In the end, it was Mu Yaja who gave her the cold shoulder. Feeling aggrieved, she pursed her lips with an ugly expression. "How did he insult you and Mommy?" Mu Yaja pressed on. Yun Tianyu pondered for a moment before telling her everything. It turned out that Lin Feng's mother had known Xianxia since they were in kindergarten. The two had gotten into an argument during the parent-teacher meeting because, in front of Xianxia, Lin Feng had said to Yu, "You're a vile spawn with a mother but no father." For Lin Feng to say such words, it wasn't a bad thing. What could a child understand? Lin Feng had probably been taught to say such things by his parents. Lin Feng's mother knew that Yu grew up in a single-parent family. He only had a mother and no father. Therefore, whenever Lin Feng mentioned Yu, his mother would say, "Don't bother with that bastard who has a mother and no father." Children born from single-parent families have very perverted personalities. When Lin Feng heard that, he remembered Yu. His impression of Yu had been influenced by his mother. She had given birth to Yu without a father. Yu immediately scolded, "Umph! She's better than that old hag of yours." She had said that in front of Lin Feng's mother. She had said it on purpose. When Lin Feng's mother heard that, she slapped Yu on the spot. When Xianxia saw that, how could she bear to see her precious baby being wronged? She immediately slapped Lin Feng's mother in return. The two quarreled in front of so many parents until their faces turned red. This was the first time Xianxia had lost control like this. She was so agitated that her whole body trembled. In the end, the principal rushed over and stopped this farce. However, this feud was formed just like that. Chapter 1578. First, he asked in a strange tone, "Is your mommy coming to the parent-teacher conference today?" Yu did not raise his head and said indifferently, "My mommy isn't coming." Lin Feng was about to sneer at him when Yu said, "My daddy is coming." Lin Feng's eyes widened. "I thought you didn't have a daddy?" His mother had always told him that Yu did not have a father, but he said that his father would come to the parent-teacher conference? Could it be that he was bragging? Yu did not pay much attention to him. He did not want to talk to him. However, as soon as class ended, the classroom was filled with gossip about him. Lin Feng went around and told the other children that Yu only had a mommy and did not have a daddy. Yu said that his daddy would come to the parent-teacher conference in the afternoon. If he was not bragging, then his mommy must have found a wild man outside. When Yu heard this, he immediately went to Lin Feng to argue. Of course, Lin Feng was not as eloquent as Yu. After a few arguments, he was at a disadvantage. In a moment of anger, he raised his fist and punched him. In the past, Yu would not have been able to win against him. However, after the summer break, he had learned some fighting skills from Xianxia. In just a few moves, he had subdued this arrogant and despotic little guy and beaten him black and blue. Even though he was also injured, it wasn't as bad as Lin Feng's. Lin Feng cried and threw a tantrum. The whole family gathered and majestically rushed to the school to demand an explanation. When Wuxia heard this, his face darkened. What did he mean by having a mother but not a father? Wuxia did not dare to imagine how Xianxia and Yu had spent the past 7 years. Could it be that this kind of vile mockery had accompanied Yu throughout his childhood? At the thought of this, Wuxia's heart ached. Such unbearable words actually came from the mouth of a 7-year-old child. It was hard to imagine how low this child's upbringing was. Lin Feng's mother had acted so arrogantly, and Teacher Yuan had said that Lin Feng came from a rich and powerful family. How could he raise such a rude child? He was an adult, so naturally he couldn't argue with an ignorant child. For a child to have such a good upbringing, it was all because of the parents' education. Hearing this, Wuxia let out a cold snort. His eyes glinted as he said coldly, You didn't do anything wrong." These words were undoubtedly meant for Yuan Laoshi to hear. At the same time, it also expressed his stance and attitude. His child did not need to apologize to anyone. The other party had insulted him and attacked him first. Regardless of whether it was due to emotion or reason, his son had merely used a legitimate form of defense. What was wrong with that? When Teacher Yuan heard this, his face turned red. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. He didn't know what to say. Chapter 1579. Pausing for a moment, Teacher Yuan explained sincerely, "Everyone says that a school is a place to educate and educate. In the process of education, as a teacher, we do need to take up the responsibility of educating our children. But this responsibility is a responsibility, and as a parent, we have to shoulder it. In school, the 4 seasons of the year, 2 semesters, 7 hours a day. The rest of the time, we spend with our parents. In terms of education, parents also have an undeniable responsibility. But as you know, which child these days isn't precious? If the teachers are strict with their education, those parents who dote on their children will trample over the school's threshold. Especially Lin Feng's parents, they are especially tricky and cannot be provoked. I don't know how to educate them. I can only do my part. But in this aspect, I especially like Yu Yu. Yu Yu is young, but he is very mature and sensible. In class, he is obedient and respectful to his teachers. I especially like him. So, as a teacher, I can only hope that you don't let your child suffer too much in this aspect. More importantly, I don't want you to offend the Lin family. Maybe you will say that I am snobbish, but this is the cruel reality of society. I really have no choice. I am doing this for Yu Yu's sake. This long speech sounded sincere, but Wuxia felt that it was too laughable and pompous. This kind of reason was not valid at all. Yu Yu's face was also cold. From the beginning to the end, he remained silent and did not say a word. As he watched Teacher Yuan patiently persuade him, he felt that it was ridiculous. Did you know why he worked so hard? He worked so hard to live a life far away from these idiots. Yu Yu pursed his lips and said unhappily, "Teacher Yuan, I don't like what you are saying. What do you mean by can't afford to offend them?" Yu Yu, why are you disobedient? Teacher Yuan was so angry that she was about to cry. She helplessly glared at him. She sighed, turned her head and said to Wuxia, "Yu Yu and Lin Feng don't see eye to eye. Wait until we resolve this peacefully. I'll see if we can separate Yu Yu and Lin Feng. Then, we'll be in different classes. Anyway, I think that Yu Yu is a very likable child. No matter which class he is in, the children are all willing to play with him. But this Lin Feng is an accident." Class allocation? The corners of Wuxia's lips curled up coldly. I don't think there's a need to divide classes. After today's incident, he would transfer Yu Yu to the same school as Xianxia. Yu Yu went to this primary school because of the school district. Because of Yu Yu's household registration, he went to this primary school. He didn't expect that the teachers in this school were so bad. Coincidentally, he was transferred to the same primary school as Xianxia. The two brothers could be companions and take care of each other. Compared to Yu Yu, Xianxia was like the king of the mountain in school. Perhaps it was because he was handsome, so all the girls liked him. Perhaps it was also because he had a strong physique, so all the boys in the school admired him and were willing to be his fans. Xianxia's school was funded by an education corporation that was working with Mu Group. Mu Group had also invested a large sum of money in the education of the teachers. The standards of the education were outstanding. In addition, with Xianxia taking care of him, Yu Yu didn't have to worry about being bullied. Chapter 1580. Teacher Yuan looked surprised. She couldn't hold it in any longer and said bluntly, "Yu Yu's father, I'll be honest with you. Previously, there was another child who didn't get along with Lin Feng. The parents of the two children got into a fight because of everyone. In the end, both parents refused to back down. In the end, Lin Feng's father stepped in and used some tricks. In the end, the child had no choice but to transfer to another school. That's why I told you not to go against the Lin family." Wuxia closed his eyes impatiently. He couldn't control himself and was about to explode when he heard Teacher Yuan's words. The door was suddenly pushed open. It was the principal of the school. She hadn't expected that the principal would be alarmed by this incident. Teacher Yuan stood up in shock. She said in a trembling voice, "Principal Wu, why are you here?" "This is..." Principal Wu glanced at Wuxia and asked, "This is Yu Yu's father, Mr. Mu." "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Mu." Principal Wu greeted him indifferently. Then he regained his solemn expression and said, "Teacher Yuan, please come to my office for a moment." After saying that, he turned around and left. Teacher Yuan suddenly felt uneasy. She said goodbye to Wuxia and left in a hurry. The moment the door closed, Yu Yu suddenly covered the back of Wuxia's hand. "Daddy, why did you come to school? I remember that you have a meeting in the morning. Why don't you go back to work? I'll take care of things here. It won't be a problem." Yu Yu was considerate of him. He didn't want to delay his trip. Wuxia lowered his head and looked at him with his deep eyes. He asked coldly, "Has it always been like this?" "Everyone says that about you." Yu was stunned. He was probably referring to the fact that for the past few years, people had been saying that he had a mother but no father. He didn't want to talk about it. He only said, "They all think that I'm an illegitimate child." Illegitimate child? Wuxia suddenly sounded a little angry. Mommy didn't explain? How do you explain that? It's obviously a humiliation. If Mommy tries to explain, wouldn't she be asking for humiliation? Yu sighed. Actually, it's not their fault. Why? That's because even I myself thought that they were right. Yu had always thought that he was an illegitimate child, the kind that could not be exposed to the public. Even so, he didn't blame his mother at all. He was very grateful. If it wasn't for his mommy, he wouldn't have been able to see such a beautiful world. It was his mommy who raised him. No matter how others slandered him or looked at him coldly, he did not care at all. The only one he cared about was his mommy. However, his tone could not hide his disappointment. Wuxia's heart was violently shaken. He immediately blurted out, "You're not." Wuxia gently caressed his little face. Yu, you're not an illegitimate child. You've never been one." He was anxious to let this little guy know that he was not an illegitimate child. He was not someone who could not be exposed to the public. Daddy really didn't know about your existence for the past 6 years. When Wuxia thought about how Yu had talked about those humiliating things in such a calm tone, he felt as if his heart had been pierced by a sharp sword. His heart ached. His heart ached for Xianxia. Chapter 1581. The guilt in his heart made him feel a little unbearable. He suddenly felt that he could never make up for the past 7 years of emptiness. Yu was only 7 years old. He should have had a beautiful and carefree childhood, but because of the lack of fatherly love, he had suffered so much. He didn't dare to imagine how painful it must be for a child to face such mockery and ridicule. Wuxia gently caressed Yu's rosy cheeks, his slender fingers brushing against his delicate skin. Then, he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry that Daddy has made you suffer for so many years. It's all Daddy's fault." Yu was stunned. He had never thought that Wuxia, who was usually not good with words, would say such warm words to him. In his heart, Wuxia had always been a cold and dignified figure. It seemed that he would never say such touching words. However, Yu was really touched by Wuxia's heartfelt words. He could tell that every word that Wuxia said was from the bottom of his heart. So much so that he forgot to react for a moment. He just stared at him in a daze as if he couldn't believe it. The pain in Wuxia's eyes couldn't be faked. Yu saw it all. Daddy's heart was aching for him. This kind of feeling was really very warm. The position of the heart suddenly became warm and comfortable. He didn't know whether to be happy or worried. He was happy that Daddy cared for him. This feeling made him feel very warm. Very good. What made him worried was the dejected look on the man's face, which stung him a little. His heart ached. Wuxia didn't know what was going on in his little head. His handsome eyes curved slightly as he gently kissed his forehead. Listen, in the future, with Daddy around, no one can bully you. Yu, on the other hand, smiled when he heard that. An unconcealable smile appeared on his adorable little face. Wuxia was stunned. What are you smiling about? Yu stopped smiling and raised his head to look at him. Pursing his lips, he opened up his heart to him, which was a rare sight to see. Daddy, do you know? I'm so happy that you're here today. Wuxia was taken aback by her words. Yu leaned slightly into his embrace and lay on his chest. At an angle that Wuxia couldn't see, the tenderness in his eyes seemed to overflow. He took the initiative to throw himself into the man's arms, but the latter's body inadvertently stiffened a little. Yu actually hugged him. In the past. In his heart, he was actually a little excited. His son had hugged him. This was probably the highest reward, Yu. After a moment's pause for a moment, Muz's hiss. This kind of hug was rare and precious. Daddy, do you know? I hope that you'll be the one to attend the parent-teacher conference, not Mommy. Okay, I promise you that I'll attend your parent-teacher conferences in the future. His promise was as solemn as a vow made at a wedding. His expression was solemn and respectful. This time, however, Yu was so amused that he lost his cool. Daddy, you're so serious. You're so cute. Wuxia, actually, in the past, Mommy and I relied on each other for survival and were always looked down upon. I didn't feel wronged, I just felt indignant. Chapter 1582. Yu continued. Grandpa used to ask Mommy to find a good man because he said that if the family didn't have a man of indomitable spirit, others would look down on us. But Mommy has always wanted to be strong. She has always been alone because of my feelings. So I thought that if I didn't have Daddy, I would have to be strong to protect Mommy and this family. Pausing for a moment, a smile appeared on his adorable face. But it's different now. Yu lifted his head from his arms and looked at him seriously. Daddy, I have you. Wuxia looked at him tenderly. Suddenly, he stroked his cheek gently. Yu placed his hand on the back of his father's hand. Daddy, you will always be with Mommy and me, right? Yes, Wuxia said seriously. I will do it. That's great. But Daddy, if you were to resolve today's matter, how would you resolve it? Yu suddenly asked. He was a little curious about how his father would resolve this matter. If he hadn't stepped in this time, with his methods, he would have definitely bullied the Lin family. Now that he had the ability and capital to do so, he didn't need to be bullied by others anymore. But since his father had stepped in, he would naturally let him handle it. When Wuxia heard this, he said domineeringly, I won't let anyone who bullies my son off. Yi was once again amused. Very good, that's very Daddy style. As he spoke, he suddenly asked quietly, do you know why that brat Lin Feng doesn't see eye to eye with me? Because he has a crush on a girl in class. She's always following me around all day long. That brat is probably jealous, so he's always looking for trouble with me. Yu's tone was as mature as an adult's. It didn't match his adorable appearance at all. Wuxia's lips twitched violently. He was still so young, but he already had the entanglement of love and hate in the adult world. Kids these days are so precocious. Because of a girl, he actually started to imitate adults to fight for a girl's affection. Are there many girls who like you in class? Wuxia brought up Yu's troubles. He let out a melancholy sigh, and the expression on his face instantly turned gloomy. Yeah, it's very annoying, isn't it great? Wuxia was very satisfied. Just like me back then. What's so good about it? Those girls are always chattering around me. I don't like it at all. Yu said honestly, I like quiet girls. He liked quiet girls, but he didn't like girls who always surrounded him and weren't reserved at all. Although children at this age might not know anything about love, they simply liked him and wanted to play with him because they were moved. But there were too many people chasing after him, and he couldn't handle it. The girl whom Lin Feng liked was recognized as the cutest girl in the class. He had been in love with her for a long time, but compared to the filthy Lin Feng who played all day long, she preferred the elegantly dressed Yu, who looked like a little prince. Because of this, many girls in class were jealous of Yu. Chapter 1583. As the father and son were talking, the door was pushed open. The principal led Lin Feng's mother and Lin Feng into the room, followed by Teacher Yuan. The father and son raised their heads and saw Lin Feng's mother glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey. It seemed like the principal and Lin Feng's mother had reached a consensus. They were on the same side. As soon as they entered the room, Lin Feng's mother's expression was even more domineering than before. There was a provocative look in her eyes. As soon as she sat down, she announced arrogantly, I've already called my husband. He'll be here soon. She looked as if she was waiting for her husband to come and do something to them. In other words, she was telling him to wait. Wuxia remained expressionless while Yu looked disgusted. This was a classic example of using power to oppress others. The principal exchanged a few pleasantries and comforted them. Then, he said to Wuxia, Mr. Wuxia, is it convenient for me to say a few words? He had talked to Lin Feng's mother before. Lin Feng's mother had said that they couldn't let this matter go. They had to give her an explanation. She had to regain her dignity. The principal agreed and promised that he would ask Yu's parents to give her child an explanation and apologize. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of Lin Feng's mother's situation. He wanted to help Lin Feng's mother regain her dignity. Mu Yazhi said coldly, "It's not convenient." The principal was stunned. "What do you mean?" Mu Yazhi said coldly, "Didn't you ask if it's convenient for me to say a few words?" "I said, it's not convenient." His arrogant reply left the principal dumbstruck. Naturally, he did not know Mu Yazhi. He was just the principal of the school. With his status, he had never even seen Mu Yazhi, let alone get close to him. When he saw that Mu Yazhi was young, he thought that he was a youngster. Therefore, he wanted to use his status as an elder to oppress him. He did not expect to be humiliated at the beginning. The principal said, "Mr. Mu, you're being unreasonable." Mu Yazhi smiled coldly. "Reason is for people to listen to." The principal and Lin Feng's mother didn't know what to say. When Yu heard this, he could not stop laughing. He finally understood who he had inherited his poisonous tongue from. It turned out that he had inherited it from his dear daddy. Who would have thought that his father's venomous tongue would be so frightening? Lin Feng's mother said impolitely, "I advise you to keep your mouth clean. Don't make the situation too ugly when my husband comes and embarrass you." The moment she opened her mouth, it was a threat. Her bearing was overbearing. Her attitude was high and mighty. Yu laughed. He raised his head and snickered. "Daddy, this auntie actually said that she's going to embarrass you. That's amazing." Although he was snickering, he did not hide the mockery on his face. His voice was not soft either. Therefore, everyone present could hear his mocking laughter loud and clear. Lin Feng's mother was completely enraged. After living for so long, she had actually been mocked by a 7-year-old child. She was flustered and exasperated as she shouted at Mu Yazhi, "Hey! Look at your son. Aren't you going to discipline him? Look at how young he is. What kind of nonsense is he spouting?" Chapter 1584. I don't know how you educate your child. Not only is he like those delinquents in society, fighting and causing trouble, but he's also rude to his elders. He doesn't know how to be polite at all. It's the father's fault for not teaching him well. I really don't know how you teach your child. Her rude words made Teacher Yuan frown. However, she remained silent and did not interrupt. She did not want to get into trouble again. Yu suddenly snorted and asked, "Auntie, have you studied before?" "What do you mean?" Yu said coldly, "I just want to ask, do you know what the idiom, frog in a well means?" Lin Feng's mother was furious. Yu smiled, "Look at your expression. You don't know what this idiom means, right? Sigh, you're so uncultured." "You," she turned to Mu Yazhi, "why don't you teach him a lesson?" Mu Yazhi acted as if he did not hear her. He lowered his head and pinched Yu's cheek. "Good son, don't tell the truth." Yu was amused. However, he looked disgusted. "Daddy, the teacher has always taught us that good children don't lie." He paused and continued, "Auntie, it was your good son who started it. As the saying goes, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. You're accusing me of violence and fighting, but why don't you think about it? It was clearly your good son who started it. Even if it was school violence, it wasn't caused by me. The law calls it self-defense. Do you understand? I heard that Lin Feng's father is a judge. Since you're from a legal background, are you ignorant of the law? You keep saying that you want my daddy to give you an explanation. Before that, shouldn't you also give me an explanation? Why did you raise such a narrow-minded son who uses vulgar words all the time? You weren't there at the time. How can you judge the right and wrong based on your words alone? It's not up to you to decide whether I discipline him well or not, right? Before you say such things, you should look at your own status. Don't make a fool of yourself. You're really disgraceful. Lin Feng's mother was furious. She thought to herself, this father and son are really refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I've said all the good things I want to say. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The son is so arrogant, and the father is also so arrogant. Aren't you afraid of suffering in this society? As she scolded the man, she nagged like a shrew on the streets. I'll give you one more chance. Are you apologizing or not? Ha. But there's no use your apology now. I want you to bring the child to my house and apologize in person. Otherwise, I won't acknowledge this debt. Oh. Mu Yaja sneered, his lips curling into a cold, impatient smile. Madam Lin, are you threatening me? Chapter 1585. She was starting to get excited. Therefore, some unpleasant words came out of her mouth. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. Mr. Mu, you should have heard of this saying before. If you do something wrong, as a parent, shouldn't you apologize? Let's put aside the fact that your son injured my baby. Shouldn't you teach your son a lesson for saying such outrageous things? Auntie, you should know that when a child does something wrong, he should be taught a lesson. Why don't you teach your child well? As for me, you don't have to worry about me. Lin Feng's mother was trembling with anger after hearing you use words. She suddenly stood up and walked out of the door. She picked up her phone and made a call. As they were separated by a door, no one knew who she was calling. However, they could vaguely hear her angry voice. Where are you? Husband, come here quickly. Let's teach this father and son who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. Mu Yaja's hearing was amazing, so he caught her words. His lips curled up coldly, but it was a smile. When Lin Feng's mother returned to the office, she was even more arrogant than before. She looked as if she was looking down on everyone. Her eyes were full of contempt and mockery. I don't want to reason with you. My husband will be here soon. If you have anything to say it to him directly. Don't blame me for not reminding you. My husband is a judge in the city hall. You'd better be respectful or else. This was clearly a threat. After saying that, Lin Feng was about to sit down proudly. You mocked him. Typical nouveau riche temperament. It was said that Lin Feng's mother was called Wang Guimiao. Her family was nouveau riche. Her family used to live in a village in the city. Her ancestors had left a few acres of land for the younger generation to build houses. When the land was demolished, they received tens of millions of yuan as compensation. They used it to start a business. It was said that when Lin Feng's father fell in love with Wang Guimiao, he was still a poor university student. Later on, with her support, he became what he was today. The Lin family would bring honor to their ancestors. Yu had already figured out the Lin family's background. Now, it seemed that she was a typical nouveau riche. When Wang Guimiao heard this, she almost couldn't sit still. Just as she was about to flare up, she forcefully held it in. Little vile spawn. She would see how her husband would deal with them when he arrived. She couldn't wait to see Yu's father bow down in front of her husband. When he looked at Mu Yaja again, he saw that Mu Yaja had an indifferent look on his face. He was sitting elegantly on the chair and exuded a noble aura, just like a noble. Wang Guimiao glanced at him, but in her heart, she sneered. This man, he is quite good at pretending. Let's see if he can continue pretending when her husband is here. Soon, footsteps could be heard outside the door. A middle-aged man in a coat knocked on the door and walked in. The man was Lin Feng's father, Lin Anghua. Chapter 1586. One was standing, while the other was sitting. Even though he had the advantage of height, Lin Anghua could still feel an unusual sense of oppression from him. Noble, elegant, unruly, and insufferably arrogant. Even though he was just sitting there, expressionless and cold, when the man casually raised his eyes and shot his gaze over, there was a kind of imposing aura that pressured him without being angry. Lin Anghua actually felt an invisible pressure from the young and shockingly handsome man's eyes. He secretly avoided Mu Yaja's scrutiny and turned his gaze to the side, but there was some anger between his eyebrows. This man's gaze was too intimidating. However, he was a little suspicious. This man looked very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, his impression of him was not too deep. This time, he had taken some time off from his busy case, so his mind was still a little muddled. Seeing that it was him, the principal immediately stood up. His expression changed. His face was flushed, but his eyes were full of flattery and pandering. Even though it was restrained, it still gave people an indescribable feeling of discomfort. Judge Lin. You're here. There was no trace of the bureaucratic tone that he had in front of Wuxia. One level higher than the other, one level higher than the other. This was very true. However, Lin Hongwa said, Principal, don't call me that. Now that I'm not in the court, you can't call me that. The principal smiled and nodded, but the flattery in his eyes did not decrease at all. He was still cheerfully welcoming Lin Hongwa and waiting for him to sit down. When Wang Guimiao saw him, she immediately went up to him. Hubby! There was a hint of rebuke and coquettishness in her voice, which caught Yu off guard and caused goosebumps to appear all over his body. What a terrifying voice! Damn it! However, Lin Hongwa's face still maintained a trace of restraint. After all, he was the chief judge of the Hall of Political Affairs. He was born with a proud background and had been doing things in the court for many years. As a result, his style of speech was full of strong bureaucratic tone. He was rigid and dignified. He cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "What is it?" "Your son is being bullied by other children in school." Wang Guimiao complained. "Lin Feng, come here," said Lin Hongwa. Lin Feng obediently walked over. "What happened?" "Dad." Lin Feng lowered his head. As soon as he said that, tears started rolling down his cheeks. "You're a man, don't cry." Lin Hongwa pretended to reprimand him, then asked with concern, "Tell me, what's the matter?" "He hit me." "Yun Tian, you hit me." Lin Feng pointed at Yu as his aggrieved tears rolled down his cheeks even more violently. When Lin Hongwa heard this, he immediately pulled him in front of him and carefully examined him. He originally thought that it was only his head that was disfigured, but he did not expect that his body was full of scars. It was beyond his expectations. When Lin Hongwa saw the bruises on Lin Feng's body, he was furious. He raised his head and looked at Wuxia. "Are you Yun Tianyo's father?" Wuxia, however, nodded nonchalantly. "Yes." "Hubby, let me tell you, not only is Yun Tianyo's father arrogant, but his words are also very harsh." Wang Guimiao exaggerated the story and then crossed her arms in front of her chest and gave an ultimatum. "Anyway, you can deal with this matter as you see fit." Chapter 1587. Lin Hongwa asked again, "Did he hit you first? Or did you hit him first?" "Of course, it was that uneducated guy who hit him first. Our Feng Feng has always been a good boy. He never causes trouble. In the end, our Feng Feng was framed and accused of being the one who attacked first. How is that possible? Feng Feng has always been protective of his classmates." Lin Hongwa nodded. "I understand." Wang Guimiao was secretly pleased. Her husband was amazing. He had just arrived, and the situation was completely under his control. Look at how Yu's father was so scared that he didn't say a word. He must have been scared out of his wits. Seeing that the situation had changed, she immediately put pressure on the principal. "Principal, you have to deal with this matter fairly. Yu's father, you have to give us an explanation today. First, you have to apologize to our child. Then, you have to take our child to the hospital for a full body checkup and apologize. This is a must. Then, you have to pay for the medical fees, nutrition fees, and compensation for our Fengfeng's psychological damage. You have to be clear about all these. If you have a proper attitude, we won't pursue this matter further." Lin Hongwa walked to Wuxia and sneered. "Sir, tell me your name first." Wuxia looked up and said slowly, "Wuxia." His voice was clear and cold. He had the elegance of a noble. However, the moment his voice fell, Lin Hongwa was fiercely stunned. Wuxia? This name was too familiar. These three words were like a towering mountain. They resounded like thunder in his ears. How could he not have heard of it before? Could it be the same name? It couldn't be the real Mu Corporation, right? Lin Hongwa wanted to get lucky and said, "Your name is so familiar. It's exactly the same as the name of the crown prince of the Mu family." "Ha!" Wuxia sneered. "There's no one else with this name in the capital." Lin Hongwa was stunned again. There was a hint of panic on his face. He stared at him blankly without blinking. He didn't dare to make any wild guesses. After a long while, he spoke in a provocative manner, but changed the way he addressed him. "You are What? Lin Ongwa looked a little uneasy. Are you the Chairman Mu of the Mu Corporation? Mu Yaja was a little impatient. You asked for my name, and I'll tell you. If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't waste my time. My time is more precious than yours. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Ongwa's eyes widened and he staggered back a step. His eyebrows collapsed helplessly. This man's attitude was very clear. It looked like this time, his blind wife had offended a big shot that she shouldn't have offended. The person in front of him was probably the mysterious and noble crown prince of the Mu Corporation. At first, Lin Ongwa